I'm calling the Brattleboro Select Board meeting to order for Tuesday, January 27th, 2026. This is a regular meeting, and Isaac let me know he might be a few minutes late. So let's convene the meeting, and John, has it been properly warned?
Yes, Liz, it was.
Thank you. Are there any adjustments to the agenda?
I actually have an adjustment to the agenda. Yes, I would like to take item B, Liquor, Tobacco Authority and Process, and move it to a future meeting. Because Cassandra Holloway, who advocates on behalf of Liquor and Control Board and our local businesses that do that, and our citizens, is not here to
All right.
be able to weigh in.
Do we need a vote?
Yeah, you could, because people might have showed up tonight for that, I think you could
Announce it and vote.
And I would suggest you could move it to your meeting of February 5th, next Thursday. Next Thursday, you'll be doing the second charter petition public hearing. And that's the only thing on your agenda that night. So if you wanted to move this item to that Thursday.
I think that sounds totally appropriate and great. So
Great.
I defer to Chair on how to make that happen.
So Amanda has moved, actually, to move the Liquor and Tobacco Authority and Process discussion from tonight's agenda to Thursday, February 5th. Do the Select Board members voting in favor of that, please raise your hand.
Aye.
Okay, that's 4-0. And so I'll begin with Chair's remarks. Hi, Ash. You haven't missed a thing. All right, so we really had quite a weekend of snow, and there's a lot of people and entities I wanted to thank. The town as a whole would like to extend a thank you to everyone in the community for their support and assistance during the cold and winter storm. And number one, people's willingness to adhere to a travel advisory played a crucial role in helping Public Works safely and efficiently clear the roads. You not only supported the Department of Public Works, but you help prevent injuries and accidents from occurring during these hazardous conditions. We're also grateful to report that anyone who needed a shelter had shelter with additional beds available each night. There were no cold weather-related injuries or fatalities, reflecting strong community awareness, preparation, and outreach. And what we also saw was demonstrated was collaboration between all town departments and community partners. Brattleboro Fire, Police, Public Works, Rec and Parks, Human Resources, Town Managers, Select Board, local shelters, social service agencies, and volunteer organizations all work together to ensure the safety and well-being of our community. And I just want to thank again every community member, partner organization, and town employee who contributed to keeping our community safe during this winter event and who will continue to be there for us in the months ahead. Thank you. John, do you have remarks?
Yeah, I had a few things tonight. First of all, snow and ice will be removed from streets and uncovered parking lots in Brattleboro tonight, January 27th, starting at 11 p.m. So I'm urging the Select Board to try to end this meeting before 11 p.m. Vehicles parked along the streets and in the uncovered lots, they must be removed by 11 p.m. or they could get towed at the owner's expense. So please let's avoid that. If you plan to leave your vehicle in town overnight, please park it in the transportation center or the Preston lot. There's a lot more information about winter parking in Brattleboro on the town's website, brattleboro.gov/winter parking. Business license renewals have started, and those are due by March 15th. If you've not received a renewal email from OpenGov, please go to licenses and permits at brattleboro.gov to update your information and renew your license, or call the assessor's office at 802-251-8156. Any new businesses have 30 days from opening to create an account at brattleboro.gov to obtain their business license. A couple things from the town clerk's office. 2026 dog licenses are available either through the online portal that can be accessed through the town's website or in the town clerk's office. All renewals are due by April 1st. All dog owners should have received an email or a notice in the mail with instructions for renewing their dog licenses. Please note, though, that town staff are working through the dog licenses already submitted, which is taking longer than expected, and anyone who has submitted online will receive an email with payment options. Also, the town clerk asked me to remind you all that absentee ballots for the March 3rd town meeting day and Wyndham Southeast School District elections will be mailed to those who have requested them on or around February 11. Voters may now begin requesting their absentee ballots to be mailed by logging into their voter portal at vote.vermont.gov or by emailing the town clerk's office at townclerk@brattleboro.gov or by calling them there at 802-251-8157. In-person early voting will begin on or around February 17th, and an announcement will be made once this option is available. Also, I wanted to thank Bonnie Batchelder, Melissa Cole, and Pete Lynch for all of their quick turnaround on the budget. They took the changes from your meeting last Thursday and incorporated those numbers into a revised budget that made it into your backup materials on Friday, the next day. Then I feel like Pete worked all weekend to find some additional revisions to the budget, and he got those to Melissa and Bonnie today, this morning, and they ran the numbers again, which includes a lot of working through workforce and a bunch of manipulations that are complex. And that resulted in a final revised budget that I'll share with you later tonight. This is essential work for operating town government, and these people step up extremely well with grace and a smile and an attitude of let's get it done and work together to make the town succeed. So I really appreciate those three folks tonight. I also want to second the words that the chair shared with you tonight on the storm, and I wanted to also call out Fire Chief Jay Simons for his excellent coordination and communication regarding the weekend storm and cold weather. And that's all I had tonight.
Thank you. Our select board members, do they have comments to make?
I do, yeah.
Okay.
I want to shout out an important fundraiser that's happening. It's the 4th anniversary of Russia's invasion of the Ukraine. Warmth in the Cold Care Packages for Ukraine. This fundraiser and just community gathering will be happening at Saxons River Distillery, 155 Chickering Drive, Brattleboro, on February 5th from 5 to 7. And the really exciting part of this fundraiser and gathering is that a Lithuanian ambassador, Varvulos, to the Lithuanian ambassador to the U.S., will be speaking. And so it's a special opportunity for Brattleboro to be able to be part of this international event. And in the words of Carrie Seacrest and her brother Christian Stromberg, who are organizing it, they quote in their email, as President Zelensky says, the Ukrainian people are defending not only Ukraine, we are fighting for the values of Europe and the world, sacrificing our lives in the name of the future. That's why today the American people are helping not just Ukraine, but Europe and the world to keep the planet alive, to keep justice in history.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I'm good.
I have something.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wanted to acknowledge the death of Alex Preddy, who was killed by federal agents on Saturday in Minneapolis. He was a 37-year-old intensive care nurse, U.S. citizen, and Veteran Affairs medical professional. He had spent his career caring for veterans. And, you know, this is Brattleboro, but this is also, Brattleboro is part of the United States and is affected by what happens around the country. And I'm really glad to see that there have been a number of people in Brattleboro who were out at a vigil this afternoon at Pliny Park, and just appreciate the civic engagement and folks here in Brattleboro who are standing up for our Constitution and against extrajudicial murders. Thanks.
All right. Shall we begin with the public participation? And there's members of the public who have an item that they wish to discuss that is not on tonight's agenda. I see Ivan, and then Eric, and then David.
Ivan Hennessy, Brattleboro, Vermont. As was mentioned, we've had a pretty massive storm recently. Town manager mentioned that the transportation center is available for parking in times when the street and the open lots are not because of the weather. Well, on Sunday night, a bunch of people got tickets, and it would be a sort of a generous gesture for the town to forego that minor windfall revenue in favor of forgiving those tickets, not charging people for trying to help out by getting off of the street and out of the uncovered parking lots.
Thank you. Eric?
I just wanted to ask if the select board emails were working. I've been trying to write to folks, and I haven't received a reply. So just checking to see if the select board emails are working or when they will be. Thanks.
I got emails from people today.
I've been receiving emails.
Yeah. It was a third person. David, thank you.
David Minor, District 7, Chair of the Human Services Committee. Just wanted to make a comment about last week's meeting. It's determined that the number of residents impacted by the organizations that applied for human services was 16,000, which means that more than one individual needs help from more than one organization. The amount of the full of the application voted for last March represents $55.75 at the median valued property. The amount that was approved prior to last week's meeting was at 1%, so the amount per median value would be half of that, or roughly $28. There may be some organizations that residents may not want to support, but the overall value cannot be denied. The value provides a much greater good than simply donating the $55 or $28 to a group. I've heard from nonprofits in town and residents who were shocked by the decision made by the board to not fund human services. Our town has a long-standing history of providing human services funding support that stretches over decades. The support was accented further by the article placed in last year's ballot by the Selectboard, asking voters to select the preferred amount of human service funding. This question has been discussed and argued ad nauseum, but what was clear is that out of 2,308 votes, 63% chose to provide 1% or more, and 19% chose 0. 3 of you simply turned your backs on a clear majority of the electorate.
Thank you. Kate?
Good evening. My name is Kate Berry. I'm a local business owner and resident of Brattleboro. I'm here tonight because many of us in this community have reached a breaking point. We are witnessing the consistent exploitation of our neighbors' most vulnerable moments, arrests, medical emergencies, and mental health crises, all being filmed at point blank range for social media consumption for a single person's personal profit. We all know who I'm referring to, Planet Hank. This isn't about the First Amendment. It's about the intersection of public safety and human dignity. When citizen journalists are allowed unfettered access to the inner perimeter of a crime scene, it risks the integrity of evidence and the due process of those involved. Furthermore, filming people during a trauma or a medical crisis is a violation of the privacy we owe to every member of this town. We are better than this. Brattleboro should be a place where people can receive help without it being turned into a viral video for someone else's profit. Once these videos are uploaded, they remain on the internet indefinitely, forcing individuals to live in the shadow of their most vulnerable moments for the rest of their lives. This digital permanence actively inhibits restorative justice, and it is deeply unethical and inequitable, as not every arrest is subject to the same public exposure. I have submitted a formal letter to you yesterday, which many of the people on this Zoom and in the room have also co-signed and sent. We are asking the Select Board to first draft a journalistic ordinance that establishes a clear, safe perimeter for all media at active police and first responder scenes. Secondly, review the Brattleboro Police Department's media policy to ensure that there are no special access or informal coordination that compromises the department's impartiality. And three, prioritize victim privacy over the voyeurism that is currently taking place on our streets. The community is watching, and we are asking for your leadership. It is time to set a standard for decency and safety in Brattleboro. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, we will discuss that at the agenda setting committee and determine when we will discuss it at a select board meeting. Oh.
Yeah, she's raising.
Chief Hardy wishes to be recognized.
Hello.
Good evening, Chief.
So I've heard the statements that were just made. I don't know what I'm allowed or not allowed to comment on, since I heard you say that it was going to be put on a agenda setting. But I do believe that some of the statements are misleading and accusatory of my department. It's one thing to not like what someone else does. I myself have had many arguments with Hank, all right? And my personal feelings do not matter. What matters is that my department does what it's supposed to do within the constraints of the law and the Constitution, and that's what we do, okay? I don't believe that it is fair to blame us for an individual's acts when we cannot stop anyone from videotaping the police. As a matter of fact, we've had people videotaping us in the past month that come up with their cell phones in my officer's face, that have videotaped my liaisons, my mental health liaisons. They have come to me saying that they're being recorded. So a part about distance, I don't have a problem with that at all. I will say that those have all been argued in courts of law around the country as far as distances, because there's a perception of what is a fair and impartial distance, that the police can have someone stand away from them when they videotape. Anything else, I will be happy to address next week.
Thank you. Let's hear from this gentleman and then that gentleman.
Hello, I'm Hank. If you don't know, I run Brattleboro News, which we're all talking about right now. First up, I would like to offer a copy of the Constitution for anybody who would like a copy. Would anybody like a copy? Seems like we've got some people who quite possibly need to brush up.
Thank you.
Point of order.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so just be sure you direct your comments to the chair.
Of course.
Okay.
Anybody else? So if we all flip to page 40, we will be looking at the Bill of Rights, particularly the
Please
First
sit down,
Amendment,
Mr. Hennessy.
which what'd you say?
I asked Mr. Hennessy to sit down, and he has.
So during the First Amendment, it's the law respecting the establishment of religion, freedom of speech, freedom of the press, and the right of people to peacefully assemble. And so I think we're hearing comments being leveled at the police department and at myself, but those do not supersede the First Amendment, and I think that it would be an abuse of authority and completely inappropriate to be the first town in the history of the United States of America to even discuss an ordinance that would limit freedom of speech, especially considering the town's desire to film ICE. So what you're basically saying is that if ICE comes to Brattleboro, you don't want the right to be able to film them, that you get to limit who gets to be a journalist or who gets to observe police activities and arrests or incidents in the town of Brattleboro, because some people, including a bar owner whose business does negatively.
Hank, your time is up, and I think that we have stretched the limits of public participation with these two. So stay tuned to see if we will determine whether or not we'll have additional
So final
discussion.
statement, I just am asking you guys not to bring this upon Brattleboro, because this issue is much larger, decided by people far smarter than any of us. And I don't think that we need to publicly shame the state of Vermont and the city of Brattleboro because of someone being upset.
Thank you very much. Steve Peterson. Hi, Steve.
I just wanted to make a couple comments that I know that there's a lot of controversy around Planet Hank's commentary, filming, etc. I do think that he provides a relevant service that does not exist anywhere else in terms of people understanding what's really happening in town, in terms of the issues we all face and need to resolve. And I have a hunch that if it weren't for the reporting that is done by him that nobody else had been doing, we'd be at a loss to really try to solve the problems that he is shining lights on. So that's just one comment. So I'd be very concerned about trying to shut him down. It's very sad what people are going through in these events, but I do think we need to know what, as a town, we're dealing with in terms of issues. The second thing I just wanted to say, too, is the Human Services vote versus a decision. I think the previous commentator just said you, quote, walked away, unquote, from the vote that had been given, that had been made about what percentage of the town budget should be allocated to that. I think the only fair way to agree that is walking away is to from a real clear mandate in town is for people to know what that funding means or doesn't mean for other services. And it's only really valid to say you have to adhere to what the population says in terms of percent allocation, if they know that adhering to that means less fire department or no West Brattleboro Fire Department or less police or less whatever it is, etc. So that vote was taken in isolation and is therefore interesting, but should not drive or handcuff town decision making. That's all.
All right. If anyone else wants to speak about the Planet Hank First Amendment commentary, they'll have to wait until it's a warned item, because I believe that we have pushed the limit on that discussion, and I don't think it's within our framework to have any more discussion on that right now. Dick.
Hey, I'm Dick. I just wanted to, petitions closed yesterday, and I wanted to thank all the people that turned in their petitions. We have 3 people, it seems like, running for the 3-year seat and 5 for the two-year seats. And I do look forward to listening to where you stand on issues. I think it's, yeah, my phone is ringing. Somebody's calling. Maybe my boss. And so I look forward to hearing how you stand on issues. We certainly have some hot topic issues. This budget process was not the best movie I've seen in a long time. The acrimony, the disrespect sometimes that you showed each other was disappointing to me. I'm okay with people disagreeing with each other, but I thought you guys crossed the line a few times, and that's not good for the town as a whole. So I know we can always do better. I'm always trying to do better. Every now and then I fall down and I pick myself up, and I would hope that you do the same. And so I wish all the candidates good luck. I look forward to hearing what you say about what you think about the issues going on in town and how we can make improvements. Thank you.
Thank you.
Angela?
Angela, are you speaking about the Planet Hang issue, or do you have another comment to make?
Thinking a little bit about the Planet Hank issue, but I think it's also a bit about some other things as well.
I'll limit your comment to the other things as well. Thank you.
Okay, I can do that. So thanks for the opportunity to speak. I'm up at Dartmouth in a hallway hiding, so I appreciate your flexibility. So I guess I want to speak about process, trust, and how some recent decisions landed in the community. So there's been 2 decisions recently that have felt particularly cold or dehumanizing. The first was the emergency zoning ordinance. It was passed just days before Christmas. It had a significant effect on a community space that's meeting a real and urgent need. And it was done despite objections from the Planning Commission, including concerns about their authority being overridden. The second was the complete elimination of the Human Services budget, despite testimony from the Human Services Committee and strong public concern about preserving compassion-based services in Brattleboro. I know these are difficult choices. I don't expect consensus. I know that there'll be decisions I don't agree with. But what I do expect, and I think that this is what everyone expects, is a visible effort to listen to people, to verify information, to seek compromises where it's possible. With the zoning change in particular, we heard statements that if there had been significant complaints supporting the ordinance, when I submitted a public records request, the town didn't produce records that reflected that volume. At the same time, the opposition to the change was visible, documented, and voiced publicly. Tonight, you have a lot of people bringing up a concern that's long-term community concern. If you want to be listening to people, and, Madam Chair, you said that at the first select board meeting, you said that you wanted to be listening to the community, to staffs, to each other, and to experts, and do the work of the people. But repeatedly, what the majority of people objectively seem to be saying is getting overridden by the committee. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Yes. Frick.
Rick Bright, District 9 Rep. The vote on the Human Services budget, I think, was a usurping of the power of the RTM. And I expect that whether or not that issue is litigated properly, that the town meeting will restore that. So I would urge you to count that when you're figuring out what the budget's going to be.
All right. Let's move on so we can get out of here before our cars get towed. First item of regular business. The first charter petition hearing.
Did we have minutes to approve or no?
Nope. We are going to conduct the first of two town charter petition hearings. The first is for the Australian ballot and the second is for open town meeting petitions. And first we need to open the public hearing. So I hereby open the public hearing. Is there anything else? No. So do you want to speak to it? Does Bob want to speak to it? Or do we should just let
I can if you want to introduce.
I think we should introduce the topic before
Sure.
The petitioners do.
Yes, and I think really this is their meeting tonight, their hearing.
Mhm.
So we'd like to hear what they have to tell the town. But the select board received two voter petitions proposing charter changes related to the town's representative town meeting. The first petition was filed with the town clerk on August 4th, 2025, and that requests the town consider discontinuing RTM, and if that measure is approved, conduct certain town business by Australian ballot. And Tom Franks and Randy Blodgett are here tonight to speak to that petition. Second petition was filed on September 9th, 2025, and that requests that if RTM is discontinued, the town instead conduct its business through an open town meeting. And I believe Millicent Cooley will speak to that after these gentlemen.
This evening or the subsequent meeting?
No, this evening.
This evening?
Yep.
All right, because I don't see her here.
I don't see her either, but.
Okay. All right, gentlemen, you have the floor.
Thank you for your time and attention. It's good of you all to come out tonight. Would you put up the first slide, please, Seth? We have slides, a video, and then there's a comedy routine afterwards. So that's the end. We can go there. I know you want it. We all want to get this over with. Thank you very much. Our petition asks for the discontinuance of representative town meeting, which I will not be speaking to tonight, since we are actually not, that piece of our vote is not on the ballot, but maybe Randy will talk a little bit about that. What I will be talking about is Australian ballot. Our petition asks the voters to adopt Australian ballot for specific items, most notably the town budget. Australian ballot offers every voter the chance to vote. Other systems do not. Next slide, please. So here's what Australian ballot is. It's an official ballot printed at public expense on which all of the candidates and proposals appear, and which is, I've left out something, marked in secret. That's Merriam-Webster. It's also known as secret ballot, and that has a lot of advantages. It's called Australian ballot. It comes from Australia because somewhere in the 1850s, I think the exact date of the complete adoption across the entire country of Australia was about 1854. They were finding that there was a lot of people were voting publicly, and they found them vulnerable to intimidation and coercion. Those are the words of the Australian Election Commission. They then, to rectify this issue, developed an independent electoral body, which developed the so-called secret Australian ballot or secret balloting. Excuse me. Going forward, I'll just call it secret balloting. It's in the legislation as Australian, but they're the same thing. Next slide, please. Vermont has a long history of voting, but not everyone's been able to vote. In fact, in the first Constitution, free men who had lived here for a year or more, were 21 years of age or more, were the only people who could vote. They also were supposed to have a peaceable and gentle, what was it? The actual words were quiet and peaceable behavior. Now, I'm sure many of us wouldn't qualify now, but they also had to produce an oath. Women, on the other hand, about 100 years later, got to vote in school meetings, but they had to be tax-paying women. In 1917, tax-paying women, once again, there's qualification on the ability to vote, were able to vote in town meetings. And the final interesting point, when suffrage was enacted by the 19th Amendment, the state of Vermont didn't ratify it immediately because the governor didn't want to. So we have a mixed history on voting. Next slide, please. So this slide shows, I took some data from the Secretary of State's website. The red line is the floor vote or town meeting votes. They collect the data. It's voluntarily collected. It's not submitted by all towns, but I did check into a few. And they say, how do you vote? And I forgot to start my timer, but I got it now. Okay, thanks, Randy. And as you can see, floor voting, and the bottom line is a little hard to see, but there are 5 size categories: below 750 voters and then over 5,000. Brattleboro's in the over 5,000. Uniformly, participation in open meeting, representative town meeting, or anything that they call floor voting is much lower than participation in in secret ballot. The key here is participation. All other voting systems produce barriers, and some of these barriers, the core of the barriers is you have to, in open meetings, you have to be in a specific place at a specific time for an unspecified duration. So you have to be able to do that to actually get to vote. You can show up at a town meeting and want to vote on one article, but your phone rings, you're called in for a fire, if there's an emergency, you may not get to vote on that matter. Let's see, am I done there? Yeah. Next slide, please. This shows what's voted across the state and by town size by Australian ballot. 81% of all towns over 5,000, and there are not a lot of them, and the only ones that do not vote everything by Australian ballot are Brattleboro and Middlebury. They're very different towns if you look at their taxes, their income streams, and their bases, and their participation. So, in the if you look at it, we do officers and some public questions, but by and large, big towns do everything by secret ballot. Next slide, please. Australian ballot or secret ballot has been gaining traction in the state of Vermont. In the last 3 years, 31 towns have adopted Australian ballot. It works best. It works better than a floor vote or open town meeting for a large group. There's some little bit of research that shows the optimal size for a group decision making is between 5 and 7 people. If you have more than that, it needs to be a mediated or assisted decision-making process. And there's some great ones of that nature. New Hampshire did a wonderful process that we'd be glad to talk about at another time. Next slide, please. So I mentioned that there's some barriers initially, and the key barriers are you have to be in one place at one time, and you don't know how long you'll be there. None of the barriers that we're addressing here are presented by a secret ballot. RTM in particular has an extra barrier, eligibility. You have to be elected to go and have a voice at RTM. This is all about, as we said, one person, one vote. Participation is critical. We believe we as a country talk about everybody getting to vote, and open town meeting does not permit that, nor does RTM. So the first 3 barriers are schedule, location, and duration. I think almost all of you have sat through a representative town meeting. They've gotten longer since I've been on it. There are other barriers that I'm going to tell you, I didn't catch them all. There's language. You can, if you're there, maybe you could bring a translator, but you have to be running back and forth inside the row. There's some visual things. There are a lot of things that are presented, complex materials, things that are handed out at the meeting that could be a visual challenge. Next slide, please. Thank you. Hearing, we do have ASL, but it's not necessary sometimes at the meetings, and sometimes it's hard to see, but it's not necessary at all for a secret ballot. Physical barriers. If you can't get there, if there's a place that you can't sit still, if you have an accident and you're a representative town meeting member and you can't get to the meeting, there's no vote. None of these barriers are presented by secret balloting. And then there's personality. I do have a personality problem, some people would say, but I don't mind standing up and talking. We have representative town meeting members who are less forward than I am, and the loudest voices of the room often say the most and may prevail, or at least that gets to the next. Fear and coercion. Secret ballot protects people against that. You can vote the way you want. And our Freeman's Oath, I think if you're a voter, you've taken the Freeman's Oath, now the voter's oath, but it states that you solemnly swear to give your voter suffrage touching any matter concerns the state of Vermont. You will do it so as your conscience you shall judge will most conduce to the best good of same, as established by the Constitution, without fear or favor of any man. That's a pretty high standard. You speak your voice and you do it clearly and honestly. And it's really hard to meet for some people in a public setting. So, next slide, please. One of the concerns I've heard about secret ballot is there's no participation. We won't be able to deliberate. We will not be able to learn. We essentially have the same opportunities with a secret ballot. Instead of having a representative town meeting information session, there are mandatory hearings under Australian ballot in the statute. So instead of being in the outskirts, outside the rope, anybody who wants to can come in if they can show up at that time, or Zoom in because it would be permissible, and ask questions. We have the same access to select board members. We could all show up here. And I think that I will just make sure I check my notes because I start running and you never know what happens. Finally, that was it. It's open to everybody. And I just want to, Randy's going to say something, and we do have a little video to show, and I think we'll still be under
time.
Our time limit. But do you want to say something now?
Yeah, I just want to bring up why we have the hearing, that the people that signed our petition, that the RTM Article 1 was changed by the select board so that it is on the ballot now as a vote from them, in essence. And if that's enacted, it goes into effect immediately, and the ordinance by the state statute would change it to open town meeting. So that's why we're not going to talk about that, because it was changed by the select board in a recent vote a few months ago. But I think we're ready for the video.
Oh, yes. Would you run the video, please, Seth?
My name is Daryl Pillsbury. I live in Brattleboro, Vermont, and I am for the one person and one vote. I was a former town meeting member. It was an okay system, but I think we can do better. I think we can get more representation by doing the one person, one vote.
Would you please tell me your name?
Judith Miller, or Judy Miller.
Would you be interested in voting on the budget and other things?
Yes, very much so.
And why is that?
Well, in the past, I was not a member of the town meeting group, but that meant that I couldn't vote, and I certainly could. I have had two major back operations, lower back operations. There was no way I was going to be able to sit through 3 or 4 hours or longer of meetings.
My name's Frank Howard.
Thank you. Could you please tell us why you support Australian ballot for Brattleboro?
I do. I think that every taxpayer in town should have a say of where and how their tax dollars are spent.
Thank you. Anything else you'd like to say about one person, one vote or Australian ballot?
I think everybody should vote for this, and I hope it passes.
Thank you very much for your time today. Please tell me your name.
I'm Patty Byther.
Please tell me what you think about one person, one vote.
I migrated here from California about 12 years ago, and I feel that I really miss being able to express myself personally. In a one person, one vote, you get to decide. You don't get to pick somebody who then may or may not decide for you. I prefer being able to do the one person, one vote, because you get to say. It's simple, it's fair, everybody gets their say, and the majority wins, which is how it should be.
Hi, would you please tell me your name?
My name is Roger Miller.
Would you like to be able to vote on the budget and other issues in the town?
Yes, I would.
And why is that?
Because I've been a resident of this community for a long time, and I do feel very much a part of it. I would like to continue to have a say in the direction that the town takes on matters of finance and issues of services that are offered to the residents.
How would you feel about attending a representative town meeting these days?
Attending as I remember them in the past. Sure. I remember them being very, very long-term events and being very tired and uncomfortable. I think I would have both physical and mental objections to sitting through a long town meeting these days.
Thank you. And one last question. Do you support the idea of having Australian ballot for the town of Brattleboro?
Yes, I do support that idea of Australian ballots.
Sarah, I think it's really important that you get a sort of wide range of voices, and if you don't have time to be a representative, or you don't have time to go to the town meeting because you're working, you don't have the day off, you have a child, that really limits your involvement in the town decisions. And so I could see how one person, one vote would allow for someone like me that's full-time, that has a small child, to participate in those decisions without having to take a 12-hour day to do
Roger, if they have Australian ballot, will you let me vote?
Well, in the old system, I guess you couldn't vote, but certainly in the new system, if it passes, you would have the right to vote.
Oh, goody.
I would just like to say the one reason that we started this petition is we want everyone to vote. So I would please urge everyone, March is as important as August, as important as November. We have less than 3,000 people on average vote in March, and we have over 9,000 voters in Brattleboro, and we average around 70 or 72% in November. So please show up, please vote locally. Thank you.
Do we take questions now or later? How are you doing this?
Do the other one.
People can, you can take questions now. It's an open hearing, so and there'll be a second hearing too. So you can do some now. It depends on whether or not you want to hear from Millicent's presentation first, and then take questions after.
So why don't you guys stay put? Because Millicent's online.
Okay.
So let's hear from Millicent, and then we'll have general questions of both petitions, if that's all right with you. All right, Millicent? Good evening.
Hi, thank you for letting me speak. Just a second, please. And thank you for Tom and Randy for your presentation. Let me, sorry, I'm trying to get to I need to minimize this so I can get to my own notes. I'm sorry. There we go. So the reason I am promoted and did a petition for open town meeting is that I think that as with RTM, it's really important for everybody to be able to debate and discuss the most important issues of the town at the time of voting. If RTM is ended in the vote, people can still do that at open town meeting. At both RTM and at open town meeting, people can hear not only the number of people who voted for something, but they can hear their point of view and why certain things are important to them. Open town meeting happens to be the default option for towns if RTM is ended, according to Vermont law, because it is so widely used in our state. But I think it's also important for it to be on the ballot because it should be something that people choose to vote for as our governance system, or not choose directly, and not just feel that this is an option that they somehow ended up with because RTM lost. At open town meeting, voters can still amend articles. as they can do at RTM. This is a power of voters at RTM, and it will remain a power at open town meeting according to law. With Australian ballot, you can only vote yes or no, but you cannot amend articles. You cannot make amendments. If we adopt open town meeting, or if we end up with open town meeting, we will continue to vote by Australian ballot as we do now for certain things. We already vote for use Australian ballot, for example, to vote for officers, to make bonds and some other things. The other thing is open town meeting is practiced by the majority of towns in Vermont. And we are one of the larger towns, but there are towns, for example, in other New England states that have been doing this since the beginning of their history as well, and that are larger than us. So, and that works. So, for them, we've been doing this since the beginning of the foundation of the state, and it's the most direct form of democracy that there is in the United States, as far as I know. Anybody who can attend open town meeting can vote. And an all-day meeting, I understand people who can't always come, but it's a worthwhile investment of time to arrive at the best understanding about the reasons that people are voting in certain ways around the budget and other complicated decisions where people should understand each other deeply. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's hear from the public. Gemma was first, and then Neil, Tim, Dina, and Ken. If I can hold those thoughts in my head, Dina, please begin. Dina? I'm sorry. Gemma.
I'd like to defer my comments.
Oh, I can't manage that, so please speak now.
All right. Gemma Seymour, District 8, representative town meeting member. Keep this up a little bit because I'm stupidly tall. First, I'd like to say that I find the presentations that have been given tonight to be prejudicial and irrelevant to the business before the public and the select board. We are not here to debate the merits of these proposals. We are not here to debate whether or not they should or should not be on the ballot. They have been, so far as we can tell, at least we've been told, duly proposed. However, I would like to suggest to the select board that that may not actually be the case. Under the terms of the Brattleboro Charter, the select board does not have sole authority to place an article before the public in this manner. Excuse me. My laptop has gone to sleep here, so I don't have my references in front of me. But the Brattleboro Charter, while it does provide means for both the select board to place articles before the public, it's not actually just the select board, it's the select board and the school board which have to vote on it. And to my knowledge, there has been no involvement of any of the school board members in placing this article on the ballot. Furthermore, a petition pursuant to 17 VSA 2645 does not permit the public to have a referendum on a charter petition or charter amendment. The provision of 2645(1)(7)(a), which talks about Australian ballot, is a subordinate clause to 2645(1), which specifies that the town meeting is the one who votes upon any charter amendments. And I should also reference, I believe it's 2680, which speaks about the relevance of the Australian ballot provision to 2645(1)(7)(a). Thank you.
Thank you. Would our legal team like to weigh in on any of those comments?
Sure. With regard to the petition, it's been been petitioned pursuant to Title 17, 2645, which allows a proposal to adopt a charter amendment to be petitioned by 5% of the voters of the municipality. All of the hearings that you're having tonight have been duly warned in accordance with 2645. And as referenced in 2645, Section 7A, voting on the charter proposal shall be by Australian ballot, which it will be come March. So in all respects, from our review, these two petitions have been duly petitioned. The number of signatures has been vetted by the town clerk's office. We're having the hearing, and I think we're good to go on that.
And with regard to the school board, those portions of the charter are moot because we do not have a town level school board.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Neil?
Thank you. I'm Neil Manders, West Brattleboro, District 7. And Madam Chair, I have sinned, and I would like to make a confession. Last year was my first year in terms of being involved with the RTM, and I represented a whole bunch of people, apparently, in West Brattleboro that I never talked to. I went to the meeting, and for the most part, I went to the meeting because I was already upset with taxes and the amount of the budget, and so I was taking my personal objectives to that meeting, and maybe I agreed with some of my neighbors, but for the most part, I was doing this on my own. I know that I'm not the only one who was doing that. I know that there were a number of people in RTM who did spend time and went out and talked to their constituents. But I also know from talking to other RTM members that they didn't do that. Now, maybe in years past, I've heard that people did do that. But I think, given the last number of years, from what I can tell, it's not happening. So I would say that if we want people to know and get a chance to vote, that we need to go with the Australian secret ballot in order to make that happen. Open town meeting won't make that happen. The Oz thing that I would say is that the big thing I've heard about RTM and OTM is that we don't get a chance to discuss. I've been proposing for all year the select board needs to be as open and transparent as they possibly can be, and I think you have been trying to do that. That people need to come to these meetings, and if they have an objection to the budget that you are proposing, that they raise that objection here and now, so that when you come up with a final budget, you have heard those objections and you know what basically the population wants. So RTM, one vote, one person, one vote, please. Thank you.
So you've sinned, and this is your penance.
My failed errors.
Tim.
Madam Chair, thank you. Australian ballot's about inclusion. Open town meeting, representative town meeting are not, plain and simple. They automatically exclude large portions of our community, not because people don't care, but because they simply can't be there. I want to tell you about my aging neighbor. She watches every select board meeting on Brattleboro Community Television. She is informed, she is engaged, she cares deeply about this town, but she doesn't have transportation, and she certainly doesn't have the physical stamina to sit through a 10 or 12-hour meeting just to make her voice heard. Why should participation in democracy require physical endurance? Why would we deny her a say when a simple absentee ballot would allow her to vote from her own kitchen table? I also want to tell you about another neighbor, a single working mother with a precarious job struggling to put food on the table for her kids. Asking her to take an entire day off, risk her employment, and arrange childcare just to participate in open town meeting or representative town meeting is not reasonable. It's exclusion by design. She cares about this town too. She deserves a voice, a vote as well. Democracy should not be limited to those with schedules, reliable transportation, financial security, or the ability to sit in a meeting all day. That's not representative. That's not fair, and it's not who we say we are. Australian ballot, secret ballot, doesn't silence voices, it amplifies them. It allows seniors, working parents, people with disabilities, caregivers, and hourly workers to fully participate. It meets people where they are. If we truly believe in broad participation and equal access, the choice is clear. For these reasons alone, we should vote Australian ballot so that everyone can have a voice and a say.
Thank you very much. Dina.
Yes, I'm only 5 feet tall. Dina Chadwick, District 9 RTM member, and also I'm running for the one-year seat on the Select Board. I just want to speak in favor of the Australian ballot. I'm not going to go into grave details because Tim just covered that for us, which is fantastic. What I will say is that we need to bring the power back to the people of our community because it seems like we're quite divided, and I'd like to see that change. And if everybody had a voice to vote, and they're not going to show up at these meetings. I talked to them, hundreds of people. They're just not going to do it. But they want to vote. They want to have their say. So let's bring our community together. Let's do Australian ballot and move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Ken. And Ivan, I see your hand. This microphone's getting a workout.
Yeah, it is. Ken Fay, District 8 RTM member. I'm somewhat confused because we have one person, one vote already for the Select Board, and they do the policy, and I think we had less than 30% or about 30% participation on a very contentious year that actually voted out 2 incumbents, which is amazing. So you have a really contentious year, one person, one vote, and you only have 30% of the people participating. What we're doing now, I think, with this is arguing about the second level. You have the first level, the people sitting at that table, and they do a budget which, come to think of it, we vote for representatives for the U.S. I don't approve that budget. They make the budget. I don't approve it. For the state, we elect representatives. They make a budget. I don't approve that one either. I can't have a say on that. You elect people to do the job. We elect these people to do the job. I think we're making a mountain out of a molehill between this open town meeting or Australian ballot. The actual real election is electing the people at the table. Thank you.
Okay, Steve Patterson. Steve, I can't hear you.
Hi, can you hear me now? Great, thank you. Actually, it's the previous commentator. It's perfect timing because I actually do believe there's a significant difference between open meeting and Australian ballot, and I'll tell you why. My background position is that RTM is not really representing people. That a very nice testimony from the gentleman earlier indicating that he wasn't necessarily distilling people's desires in his district. He was really voting for his own interests or goals or objectives or feelings. Most people who I speak with agree that there's some who listen. There are a lot who have narrow interests and are pushing specific agendas, often in a very organized way. So we do need to return power to the people. One, I'm concerned with open meeting. We noticed when we had the RTM meeting here in West Brattleboro about the safety ordinance, a strategy was deployed by a certain faction to at the very 11th hour, bring in legal threats. that had a completely destabilizing, chilling, blocking effect on the previous dialogue. Everybody got cold feet, said we don't want to be sued, and that carried the day. We also saw this strategy again deployed in a recent select board when we were discussing homeless encampments. In was brought the ACLU at the 11th hour to make a legal threat that we know, I think, believe was hollow. But this is not a tactic that we can be bullied by anymore. I propose, if you want to have an open discussion, great, but we must have a period of time before an open meeting and the final vote so that these veiled threats, empty threats, and slick tactics can't derail true consensus. So for that reason, Australian ballot, please. And if you're going to do an open meeting, fine, do it. But give a week to clear the air about false statements before people vote.
Thank you. Ivan? Then Frick.
Hello, Ivan Hennessy, Brattleboro, Vermont. Millicent raised an issue, which is that articles cannot be amended with the Australian ballot, which obviously makes sense. There would be no process for that. So if there's an article for zero funding for the human services budget in an Australian ballot, and that article is voted down, what happens?
Bob, can you answer?
There would be the select board, if it's a budget, well, I guess that would be if you have a specific article solely on that, but anything that's, if it's voted down, it's voted down. If it's a budget, and which is a separate article, and that gets voted down, you then revise the budget, hold a public hearing on it, and then another vote. And you keep repeating that process until you get a budget. But if it's a separate article by Australian ballot, and you either have a zero amount or a $1 or $10 or $100,000 for human services, and that gets voted down, that's binding.
Thank you. Frick.
Sorry, can I follow up with Bob real quick, just to clarify? So when you say it's voted down, yeah, let's say it's a separate article for something for $1, and the voters say no, then it's not funded at $1 and also just goes away, right?
Correct, because that's separate from your budget article.
Okay, thank you.
There's a specific statute on how you repeat the process when a budget is voted down until you keep doing it until you get a budget.
Yep.
Randy, you had a
Thank
question on
Yeah,
this
it's just
legal question?
of that. So if there is that separate article and it's for an amount and it can be voted down, in a future charter change, is that part of the local charter or the state statute?
If you're, with regard to this, and you're voting on all things by Australian ballot, that would be in your charter, because this ultimately would go to the legislature. And depending on what the legislature does with it, it will be similar to the statute, but it will be a charter amendment if this vote passes.
Okay.
Rick.
I think Ken has a good point here, and I think deliberation and becoming informed and building consensus is overrated, and I think we should get rid of all of the deliberative bodies and just vote up or down on the state budget by Australian ballot, and how about our national budget as well? Perhaps, I mean, you guys probably don't feel like sitting in the seats all these hours, and all of us here who spend hours sitting in, joining you and supporting you. Anyway, obviously I'm joking. As a longtime RTM member, the community building and consensus building process that happens there by people who've chosen to take the trouble to run and serve their 3-year terms without knowing what's coming up in the upcoming town meetings I have found extremely valuable. And the fact that we are elected, even though the number of people who run has been give or take the number of people we've needed. And in recent years, if you missed the opportunity to run, you could get caucused in. And that's usually been a very easy process. So the idea that somehow RTM is less inclusive, I think is factually incorrect.
Janet. Oh, wait, I'm sorry, Janet. I want to do Gary first, and then you two in the front, and then we'll give Ivan one more shot.
No, Jackie and Nell, and then
Jackie, Nell,
and then
Dick.
if no one else wants to speak,
Okay.
Ivan.
Okay, so did Dick speak on this yet?
No.
Okay, so when everyone's done, Ivan gets a second shot. Gary.
Thank you, everyone else in the citizens. I'm just trying to understand. We do have informational meetings before RTM, keyword informational. There are videos on the town's website with Andy Davis explaining how it works. And also, if needed, we also have meetings from the district chairs at the library or somewhere that's neutral for any Q&As. I've been out there walking the streets. It's not just RTM. People don't either know that exists, let alone committees for the town. I've mentioned committees. Said, you know, we have a planning committee. What's that? So my thing is, you know, looking at both RTM and OTM, the time that you're going to be spending, and people really like reading that book, and that book has gotten thicker over the years. And if you looked at your history, I checked way back in time, landowners were the only ones that were able to vote at these town meetings. We've come a long way. And I feel that progress needs to be continued. There is vested interest, but there's just not information. There's not knowledge. There's not education explaining to the people one-on-one if they need it, like the gentleman said. There's a lot to digest in that book, and a lot of people don't have the time. I mean, I can imagine the books that you have in front of you before you have to read, before you come to select board. And either you know what it entails, the agenda or the article, or you don't. But I think that's the main concern for me is people, either RTM or OTM, will they know what they're voting? Once you make the vote, that's it. OTM. RTM, you have time to discuss. So I just think people should take time, take a step back, think, and decide what it is they decide they want to go forward before they make any harsh or rational decisions. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, please.
Janet Therese, I live in West Brattleboro. I'm going to repeat the same thing I said when I first heard about the Australian ballot, which is the one thing that we know. The only data point that we have is that RTM does not represent the population. We have that from, I voted, not on RTM, but as a citizen on whether or not I wanted the safety ordinance in place. And I also voted how I felt about the distribution of the human service budget. Both of those differed from the RTM. I mean, there's no way of sort of sugarcoating it. I hang out in the laundromat from time to time to do my laundry, and I chat up people in there, and they are not represented. They feel defeated, they feel unheard, and they don't come to these meetings. They don't sit through them. But if you had a process where everybody got a chance to vote, they care. And they want to say something they thought that they had. I'm really animated because the only data point that we have is that RTM does not represent the population. It just doesn't. The second thing is that we know that there are people in this community that want to speak out, and they are not able to. And the more, I guess my final point, if I can put it sort of eloquently, I don't know if I can, but the more people think that they can influence the vote, the more they'll show up. So if people during a particular election thought they really could get their voice heard, vote on something, and it would be listened to, appreciated, that it counted, that vote would we would have many more people coming out to speak their minds. Anyway, so that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Janet. Okay, so now Nell, Jackie, and Dick.
Hi, Nell Mayo, District 8. So many things to kind of put together in thoughts here, but what an undertone of what I'm hearing is that people are frustrated when what their personal view isn't always carried forth through, essentially, you could call it a representative body. I don't actually think, my understanding for why representative town meeting was employed was to ensure a basic quorum as opposed to open town meeting, such that you need at least 75 people there to pass articles, whereas open town meeting doesn't have that same burden. So to me, that's a bit of a misunderstanding in terms of what the goal is for getting those districts. They want a representation of people across town, and they want an obligation of a certain amount of people to show up. My personal feeling is, again, that we have a misunderstanding of the power balance when people say, well, if you want your voice to be heard, come to the select board meetings. We can come to the select board meetings, and the best we can do is attempt to compel you with our voice, and either the person who is elected is going to listen or not. Through town meeting, we have a fail-safe if you feel so strongly such that your view isn't represented through select board that we don't through Australian ballot. And that is the power to amend articles. And as we just heard from the attorney, we could go through the process of rejecting the budget over and over. Ultimately, I would argue that would take much longer than the 1 12-hour day for town meeting. And frankly, I think that both this year and last year, whether or not the budget passes has been a relatively nonpartisan issue. There are people that are connecting over ideological lines that they wouldn't have on other issues. I took notes. I have to look at them.
You have 9 seconds.
Thank you, Liz. I feel that there is an obligation to participate in a participatory democracy, and I ran out of time, but thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Jackie.
Jackie Reese, District 9 rep. So I'm listening to numbers flying around, and one of them I heard was only 30% of the people come out to vote. 30% of the people is 3,600 people? I mean, 12, 24, 36, right? So that's 3,600 people. It's a lot bigger than 120 or however many town reps we have. And people talk about how people aren't, if they want to affect something, they can come to these meetings. We got 30 seats here. We got some spillover, which is usually taken up by other town folks. So I don't see how that makes any sense that this and the representative town meeting is better representative of all the people than even if it's just 3,600 out of 12,000 who come. It just doesn't make sense to me. And as far as coming to these meetings, you know, I love coming to these meetings, and I don't always have time or the energy, you know. I don't even always have the time or the energy to do it on Zoom. If I had a couple of kids or anybody else that I was taking care of, you know, this would go out the window. So, and if I had, you know, a full-time job and then other responsibilities, the same thing. You know, the people who come to these meetings are people who have the time. And that's it. I mean, everybody who wants to vote will vote. There are plenty of people who don't. But you would have a lot larger number of people who would be voting on these items. And that's why I think that the Australian ballot is the way to go. It's the only way, to me, to make this fair and not have things happen to us that we have no control over, to our tax dollars and to us.
Thank you. Okay. Dick, Robin, and then Ivan again.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman.
Before you start, can I just see hands of anyone else who would like to speak? Because, you know, we got to move those cars tonight.
He wants to speak again.
You want to speak again?
Heidi wants to speak.
Heidi wants to speak.
And Sue.
Heidi and Sue.
Madam Chair, I'm wondering, will there be time to take a break during the hearing, or are we going to wait till after the hearing?
Well, we generally take a break at 8, and
Okay.
it's 7:30.
Great.
All right, Dick, please.
For years, town meeting was really devoid of interested candidates. We would have 3 of the districts with several, 6, 7, 13, pick a number, not interested in RTM. And what happens, I heard someone say, well, we caucus. Well, when there's a caucus, what happens is you go out and recruit somebody who's a like-minded thinker. And that's not good for RTM. When you have votes up here, 3-2, 4-1, I'm okay with those. I don't need 5-0 votes to say, hey, everything is wonderful. I look for different points of view. And we don't get that at RTM. We had a special meeting a year ago, and we had a lot of one-issue candidates show up at the school up in West Brattleboro trying to become RTM members for that one issue. Those aren't the people that represent the whole. So that's not what I'm looking for. That's not good for the town, one issue. And that's what RTM has become, one-issue candidates. Now, I'm not sure if I'm looking for OTM, open town meeting, or Australian ballot. I haven't come to that conclusion. But I can tell you, I've been around RTM longer than most, not as long as some, and I have never felt that it has been a representative of the whole town. And it has evolved since when I first got involved. So I think you really have to think about it. And when you look at, we do have an open town meeting right now, and it is the high school budget. There's 14, almost 15,000 registered voters. And how many people go to that meeting? And I feel that that's a potential for our open town meeting, that maybe the first couple of years that we may get a high number of people showing up, but like anything else, I think it will die down. And so that's what really scares me about open town meeting. And I would agree with Jackie, I'd rather have 3,000 people voting on the budget than 150. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Robin.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to bring up that I'm not sure if this point has already been made, but to move from a town meeting format, whether it's RTM or open town meeting, to an Australian ballot is diminishing the power of the voters because it changes what voters are able to do from adjusting the budget, giving feedback on the budget, increasing or decreasing specific articles to simply a yes/no vote on the budget. And so if we were to vote no on a budget, like last year we voted no on the budget at RTM, and there was a lot of discussion about why people were voting no. So when the select board reconvened and developed a new budget, they knew what everyone had been complaining about and what needed to be changed. But if it's Australian ballot, they're not going to know. Did they vote it down because it had too much spending? Did they vote it down because people wanted us to spend more on this specific area? There's no feedback and there's no power to the voters to have their will be known about things that they want to change in the budget. So all they can do is vote it down. I would strongly guess that if you switch to an open town switch to an Australian ballot, that is going to result in more budgets getting voted down, and that can really cause delays that are tricky and troublesome for the town. So I don't think that's the position we want to be putting ourselves in. We have a lot more chance of passing a ballot that people are happy about if there is a mechanism for feedback and discussion and adjustments at the vote.
Thank you. All right. Heidi, then Sue.
Heidi Fisher, District 7. I'm also an RTM rep as of last year. And I'm totally open to changes in our system. I think that's healthy, and it's healthy to have these conversations. When I think about the Australian ballot version, the place I get stuck is people who come to meetings or listen to Zoom meetings on Zoom, the select board meetings, or are in the conversations, have listened to a lot of different opinions and understand more of the nuance of the issue. I don't quite understand how, with a yes-no vote only, that people would really be understanding, and this is not belittling people's knowledge, it's just if they haven't heard those nuances of the conversation, they may wind up voting a yes or no in a way that they don't really understand what they're voting for because they haven't heard those nuances. So I'm curious what you guys would say about that. And I mean, I don't know where I stand with all this. I'm open to hearing about it, but that is a big concern of mine, the just flat yes, no, without necessarily knowing the full story. Thank you.
They want to address it.
Gentlemen, do you wish to address that comment? You've been interrogated.
Go for it. You go first. No, you go first.
I feel there's been a couple things to clarify. Heidi made some good points, as everybody has. You have to remember, we're talking about representatives in one form and voters in two of the other forms that we're discussing. RTM is a select group of, people that were elected to represent people. They're not voters in the scheme of, there's 9,000 and some voters, according to our town clerk, currently in the town of Brattleboro. The school board that Dick mentioned is a larger body in the community. So when you say voters, 28% of that 9,000 or something show up to vote in March typically. That's historical. 72% of those 9,000 something show up in August and November when there's federal seats on the ballot. So that's just telling you history is people think those elections are more important than our local election for whatever reason. I get that people want to discuss, they want to amend, they want to do things. And, but would they all want to do it? I don't know. That's why we should have an election and find out. I believe that I've heard from numerous people when we've gone around getting these petitions and going around just talking to people in general about what goes on. They care way more about where our taxes are, who's running the town is, and they think we've gone too far, and they want to be able to say yes or no on that. So I don't have a final answer on what's right or what's wrong. We're going to have an election to figure that out because everyone has an opinion. But I would remember there's representatives that are elected, and do they represent a larger body or not? Neil said no in some circumstances. Other people, I know Gary, we've talked a lot at different times, and I believe sincerely he goes around and asks his neighbors what they think so he can represent them. But I still believe, after sitting through a lot of these meetings, a lot of charter reform meetings, that I rather have 9,500, 700, whatever the number is today, decide our town's issue than 150 at RTM or whatever lower number might show up at OTM, because we won't have 9,700 or 600 show up there. We don't have room.
Tom?
Yes, thank you. I'd just like to say that the deliberation, the discussion, the amendment, all these things that are touted as benefits of either representative town meeting or open town meeting face the same exclusion. The people who can show up get to do that. And it's very clear that the people who can show up are perhaps a special class and perhaps a minority of the town. Let's take there are a lot of examples of barriers that we didn't touch on that I forgot to mention. None of them exist in Australian or secret ballot because no matter what your job is, if you're an essential worker, if you're a first responder, if you're a busy parent, if you've got a job you cannot miss, you get an absentee ballot. and you vote in your own time. If you're someone who has trouble understanding words going very quickly, or someone who thinks slowly like I do, it's better to be able to read them, read the ballot, and decide what you're going to vote on. I think that we are disenfranchising a vast and unknown number of voters by we do know how many voters we disenfranchise. We effectively disenfranchise all but 135 voters when we have an RTM. We have an open town meeting, we disenfranchise the voters who cannot get there. And there are 1,000 reasons you can't get there. I'd love to do a little poll of the room. I will name first responders, people who are on duty and can't get to a town meeting. If we sat around and when we thought about it as a thought exercise, who else could we come up with that couldn't get to an open town meeting and may not get to vote on the issue they want, even if they got there? It's all about whether or not, it's about the barriers to participation in our democracy. And it's really important to me, and I presume to all the 400 plus, close to 500 people who signed the petition, that we all get a chance to vote. And there's no evidence. I mean, there are assertions that the town meeting format improves community, but there's no data that improves the outcome of the deliberations. Being able to amend something on the fly, that's the worst way to edit anything is in a group. I mean, I don't know if you ever tried to group edit, but it's just terrible. You're better off sending off one person on their own, and they edit it, comes back, and it's a lot better. And I'm stopping because you didn't start the time. I'm sorry.
That's fine. Thank you very much. Okay, what I see before me is... Yes? Yeah,
I was making sure you saw her. Sorry.
What I want is to call on Sue. I'd like to know if anyone else wants to speak. I see the people on the screen, and there are people who have spoken, and the second chance is for Ivan, Ken, and Steve, and they'll only have a minute. Sue, would you like to begin?
Before moving to, Susan Belleville, Brattleboro. Before moving to Brattleboro as a permanent resident, I lived for 25 plus years in Guilford. Open town meeting was how they conduct business. They still conduct business that way. My children were young. I did not have the luxury of being able to attend open town meeting and have my voice heard because one of us, either myself or my husband, had to stay home with the kids. I was disenfranchised as a young person from participating in town government just because it was open town meeting. When the kids got older, the town of Guilford decided to start offering childcare services, so I was able to bring the children and pay for childcare services while I participated in town government. They knew I was not too far away, so oftentimes we got interrupted. So let's fast forward to now living in Brattleboro. About 2 years ago, I got a harsh reality check around health issues. I have an arthritic right knee. It took a long time to get on a good regime where I could move successfully without a huge amount of pain. And in the middle of that process of getting stable, I was a representative town meeting, and sitting in the school gymnasium was very, very painful and very uncomfortable. The moderator didn't acknowledge me numerous times when I had raised my hand to speak. That was discouraging. And then I had to use the bathroom with my arthritic knee, walking for 7 minutes to get to the bathroom area. That was really, really discouraging. I don't feel that my ability to vote and have a say in how things are run in the town of Brattleboro should become a medical marathon of pain and discomfort. And I strongly support Australian ballot. Sorry. Australian ballot, because it matters that people get out to vote, and they have the right to do that.
Thank you. Okay, so before these three people have their second,
Is that someone new?
Gary wants to.
Yeah, somebody.
Bob Oser. Bob, you get to be the last first voice.
Hello. A lot of good arguments from folks. The two that I felt that were compelling, or one correction I think that I feel needs to be made. We keep talking about representative as if it is representing. And I think on the town website, the way representative town meeting is structured is that there's an equal balance of representation from the three different districts. So that's what representative town meeting means. You can take another meaning to it, but that's the one that apparently is in stone. The other argument that I thought was compelling was the example of if there's an item on the ballot, which is, say, for example, the $1 for human services, and it's yes or no, you don't know what that answer means. Similarly, if it's the budget itself, and the only thing you can say is yes or no, you have no idea what that means. And so that means we're having another election, which is not cheap to do all the time. So I just thought those are arguments that were swaying. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so let's go back to Ivan for his minute.
Ivan Hennessy, Brattleboro. This article, which will be up for Australian ballot in March, is a demonstration of how Australian ballot drastically shifts power to the select board. As they mentioned, there were two parts to it. One of them has been removed. It's been offered up as an article by the select board. It just illustrates that what you end up with on the ballot is determined by the select board. You all have this extraordinary power all of a sudden to decide what's an option, and the people have a yes or no say, and that's it. But the voters aspect is a little less important than the fact that the select board just grabs this option for controlling the articles even more than you do already.
Ken?
Madam Chair, could we have a point of clarification? What was removed from, I don't recall anything being removed.
The select board acted at the recommendation of the town attorney and the charter commission to put an article on the budget saying, shall RTM be, I don't know what the exact, discontinued, right?
Right.
We took that out of these people's petition so that it would have the clarity and effect of a local law and wouldn't have to go, as the two petitions do, up to the legislature, to the governor, and back down again.
Right. Thanks.
So that when we vote to yes or no to rescind RTM, that can take immediate effect in our town.
Right.
And that was the point.
Right. Thank
Ken?
you.
Thank you. I just wanted, Ken Fay, District 8, I just wanted to confirm or let people know I'm really for RTM. I just think, this, and if RTM went away, I'm for OTM. And this, what I just don't understand, talking about the disenfranchised, we're disenfranchising people with RTM when 27% of the people vote. That means there's 63% who are already disenfranchised. And so to me, those are the people who, who we need to talk to. They're already, they don't like these reindeer games. and we're making it even worse. So to me, I think we have to think about keeping it simple, what we have now. And also the RTM, oops, my time's up and I'll go.
Madam Chair, can I just ask a question since it's our hearing?
Yes.
I just want to understand who's disenfranchised if there's 9,000 and some voters and 27 or 28% show up on average, and they all have the right to show up, but they chose not to show up.
That's their choice.
That's all I wanted to ask.
Okay. And what I'm going to do is hear from Steve and Gary each for a minute, and then I'll ask the two petitioner parties to briefly wrap up. Closing statement. Okay?
Go home.
So, Steve.
Hi, I just wanted to comment a little bit further. In terms of the open meeting and issues around that, I know that with the RTM and with the acrimony that occurred around the vote for the safety ordinance, I know that there was a frequent expression of intimidation, pressure tactics, boycotts, bullying around that safety ordinance. And for that reason, people didn't really feel truly free to express what they wanted or what they believed. I think open meeting, it's a small town, everybody's very interconnected, and an open meeting presents that same problem and disenfranchises people specifically because of that. I also think that there are ways around some of the the Australian ballot issues, maybe in terms of ranked choice voting or the way things are structured, or really let's lean into AI and synopsizing positions for quick reading before the vote happens. I think there's a lot of ways around the issues with Australian ballot.
Okay, Gary, 1 minute.
Okay, quick and brief. I just want to make sure also too, thank you, Randy, for that. This the people that I do come in contact with, just to understand also, you have a lot of new people that came up here that don't understand the town's operations, along with people who are current people who live here that are steep rooted, to give them that understanding to the pros and cons. It was a great PowerPoint presentation you guys did, but I'm sure people are going to want to know, okay, that's great, but we need to know more about OTM. Is it similar to RTM? Listen to Sue Bevel mentioning about daycare. There's a lot of factors of people who can't make it. Your seniors and stuff. So this having probably a informational session in regards to that, and letting people know and understand the pros and cons and what it entails, so they have a better understanding on how they're going to vote, and not just throw it out there and say, okay, I guess, because I have a hard enough time understanding my health care. Imagine everybody else having to figure this out. So that being said, if there's something that you guys could put out there or have a meeting, that'd be great. Thank you.
Okay. Statement. And shall we ask Millicent, would you like to go first?
Yes. I'm having a little trouble with my screen. Can you hear me? See me? Great. Okay. It's interesting to hear what everybody says, and I actually think that there are good things about every one of these systems. There's a lot of people that have spoke about the problem of a small group of people or trying to influence the vote, and I think that's a problem with all of these systems, and that's also a problem with Australian ballot. I mean, it's not like that's going to solve that. With Australian ballot, what you have is you have the internet and social media, and we see what that has done to our national politics. And I feel that people do try to influence each other. I mean, some people, I think, even run for select board and try to in order to try to influence other people and influence other issues. That happens all the time. But in a face-to-face meeting, it's, people know when it's a little easier for people to tell when other people are lying and misinforming them. People get challenged immediately on the floor. I'm actually going to be voting for RTM and OTM, and I this isn't the meeting for this, but I want to make sure. I think there's a lot of confusion about how the actual voting is going to work and how the voting rules work. So we have to make sure that that's really, really clear. No matter what you want to vote for, we have to really help people understand that. But anyway, I think that RTM and OTM are, you're looking at people in the eye when you say what you think. And I think that with Australian Ballot, it too is vulnerable, but it's vulnerable to social media misinformation much more so. Anyway, I hope we make the right decision. It's whatever.
Thank you, Millicent. Okay, one of you gentlemen, please sum up.
I'd like to sum it up with that there are plenty of chances for informational meetings, caucuses, district meetings, coffee with your neighbor, coming to a select board, joining a committee, going over and just talking to your neighbor, and writing the select board, talking to the select board. I've done it. Everybody can do it. Do they want to do it? We have, I'm going to use 9,500 voters as an example. That's around 6,500 show up for when it's a national election. Around 2,700 are showing up when it's a March town meeting. And that's their choice. They're not disenfranchised. It's their choice. So they didn't come. So they abstained, which we've had happen at select board meetings and at RTM meetings. It's their choice. It's democracy. It's messy. Everybody that's talked is right under our law, under our country, the way we think. And I applaud that. All we're trying to do, and the people that signed our petition want to do, is have a say, not be second-guessed, not be told, we're going to do this to you because you're one of them. They just get to vote and move on, and we do our business as a town. Please, no matter what you think, show up and vote.
All right, then. I will bring the hearing, the public hearing for Charter Petition 1, Australian Ballot, and for Charter Petition 2, Open Town Meeting, to a close.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
A question. What happens at the second? Do we do this again?
In a word, yes.
Another presentation?
And it's up to you, but I think it's an opportunity to reach different people who may not have been able to hear it tonight, and I think that's the point of having the two meetings. So, come on back. Okay. All right, now let's have a break. How about until 10 after? All right. Thank you all for coming back to order. So we're on to, as we discussed, we've moved item B, and we are now at item C, open meeting law refresher. And I appreciate our town attorney and assistant town attorney.
Okay. Should we get Isaac?
I'm sure he'll mosey in.
Would you like me to start or wait for him?
Does anyone see Isaac in the room? David? I guess you should begin.
Let's just jump in because this should be quick.
Begin. Yeah.
Seth, can you start our slideshow? So we were asked to provide you with a little refresher on open meeting law and the rules around that. So we've prepared a short slideshow just to make it a little bit more digestible than putting it into a memo. So the open meeting law is created pursuant to the Vermont Constitution, which requires that government officials are accountable to the people they represent. And so in accordance with that power and that accountability, all meetings of the public body have to be open to the public.
except for executive sessions. And there's a couple other exceptions that we can get into. And so, Seth, you can go to the next slide. A meeting is anytime there is a gathering of a quorum of the members for the purpose of discussing the business of the body or to take a public action. The business of the public body means the body's functions, including any matter over which it has supervision, control, jurisdiction, or advisory power. So basically, anytime you're making a decision or discussing town business, if there is a quorum, then it qualifies as a meeting and needs to be in compliance with the open meeting law. Next.
And a quorum
slide.
is 3.
Sorry?
Quorum is 3.
Correct.
For your board, yes, a quorum is 3. So there are a couple things that are not meetings. I won't go through all of this in detail. The main exception that comes up the most is group emails, phone calls, etc., for the purposes of scheduling a meeting or setting an agenda. You cannot discuss any other business, and all of those communications are public records. You are also not considered a quorum if you were to all attend a social gathering, convention, conference, training program, media event, or otherwise gathering, so long, again, as you do not discuss the business of the body that you think will become, or something that you think will become business at a later date. It also doesn't mean a quorum at a meeting of another body. So if you were to all attend a committee hearing or appear before the legislature, that would also not be considered a meeting as long as you don't take action on any business. And town meeting also is not a quorum, but has its own rules for warning and participation. Next slide, Seth. There are some basic requirements for meetings. I'm sure you're aware of this, but just to go over them. You need to provide advance notice according to law. There's a couple different timeframes for that depending on the type of meeting. The agenda has to be posted for all meetings except for emergency meetings. You have to allow for public comment. You have to provide public accommodation. You must record the meeting, and you must take and post the minutes of the meeting. So the only times that a public body can meet in private, the first rule here doesn't really apply to what the select board does per se, but site inspections for the purpose of assessing damage or making tax assessments or abatements, clerical work or work assignments of staff or other personnel, and deliberations in connection with a quasi-judicial proceeding, which is basically any time you are weighing evidence, taking testimony, and deciding something that affects the legal rights of one or more person. And so the deliberations are the weighing and examining and discussing of the reasons for and against those decisions before you ultimately make the decision at a public meeting. And the other main exception is for executive sessions. Next slide, please. So just a couple specific points to keep in mind. We went over this briefly, but group chats and emails that include a quorum of the public body can only be used for scheduling or distributing materials to discuss at a meeting. You can't ever use them for discussion purposes. One other thing is that if you were to use a document sharing service like Google Docs, Teams, or OneDrive where you're collaborating on a document together, that might violate open meetings, so I would recommend against that. Except, again, in the situation of a quasi-judicial proceeding where if you were all working on a written decision together, that would be allowed. Next slide. And then social media. You are, of course, allowed to use social media, but you should be careful about engaging in a dialogue if there's a quorum of members involved, like if there were multiple people responding to a thread on a post or something like that. That could be a violation of the open meeting law, and this is especially true on Front Porch Forum because it is not technically an open forum because membership is limited to residents, and you need to be a resident in order to view the Brattleboro Front Porch Forum and participate in it. So there are consequences for violating open meeting law. There are both criminal and civil consequences. The criminal consequence is that if you are a member of a public body and you knowingly and intentionally violate the open meeting law, it is a misdemeanor punishable by a $500 fine. And then the civil consequences, an action can be brought by the Attorney General or anyone that's aggrieved by a violation. They must first give you notice and give you an opportunity to cure, which you can do by ratifying or avoiding any action that was taken at a meeting that was not in compliance with the open meeting law, and adopting specific measures to prevent future violations. And if it's not cured, then they could go file an action in civil superior court, and there is a chance that you could be subject to attorney's fees and litigation costs if they were to prevail. Last slide, please. So just to summarize, this is a way of ensuring that you are accountable to your constituents by making sure that all meetings are open to the public, and anytime a quorum meets to discuss the business of the public body or take any action, open meeting law applies. Any questions?
Well, thank you very much. I think kind of the maybe you could discuss like serial conversations.
So the issue with serial emails where it goes from one to another and then 2 or 3 people reply. Essentially, if you do a reply all and it's not for scheduling or agenda setting, and you're discussing the business of the public body, that can be a violation of the open meeting law. And in bringing this up and having this refresher, the whole idea is to make sure you don't do that. It's pretty easy in today's world with social media, the reply all, front porch forum, to mistakenly violate the law. The good news is there is the safe harbor of ratifying it, saying, hey, there have been times in the past where we have, a glitch in posting a warning, and you ratify that at the next meeting, take steps to make sure that doesn't happen again. All of that is pretty good, but we don't want you to inadvertently violate the law. It's just better government if you comply with it right up front.
But my question was also kind of, like telephone tag. Like I'll talk to one member, but and I could talk to
so long as you're having a conversation with one other member, that's okay, because that's not a quorum. But
I can't tell another member what the first member said.
Typically, yes, there can.
Like that's the tricky part.
Yeah,
right?
That's the tricky part. You generally don't want to do that, but there's not a prohibition of you calling individually each select board member, so long as that phone conversation is only the 2 of you and not 3.
So the problem comes in when you tell one person what another person said.
Right, because then that's that serial. That's no different than a group chat.
Well, thank you. I think.
Yeah, could you speak more about the front porch forum posts? I understand what the concern is, but what are the things that members of the select board could do to, besides not posting and not using that tool, what are the things that could be, steps that could be taken to mitigate any risk?
You are absolutely free to post on Front Porch Forum. It's just that you need to be cautious if there is an ongoing dialogue amongst multiple people that there are not more than 3 members of this board chiming in on that dialogue.
So if you're posting something and disseminating information and that's it, that's perfectly fine.
About a vote that has been, about the vote that was taken, or about a particular, like an opinion on an issue. It's just the issue is if Amanda posts on Front Porch Forum and then Peter adds in his then I shouldn't then chime in and then I start chiming in. That's when it starts being an issue, because then it's a conversation. That's the real concern, right?
Yeah, it's really when you're all collectively discussing an issue that you should be discussing here.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Isaac? Oscar?
Just to clarify, so I've chaired 2 town committees before this that are subject to the open meeting law, and even having done that, this stuff still gets confusing for me sometimes. To understand the part about serial conversations, just so people listening understand, because it's been confusing for me in the past, the idea is that we could sort of simulate a full board discussion by just talking to each other individually, and I could talk to Liz and say, should we do this? And then go to Isaac and say, Liz says we should do this and I agree, and then bring that information to Fish. And I'm just talking to everyone one-on-one, but we've sort of simulated, well, we've had a discussion and reached a decision, but it was all in private. And that's the key thing to avoid in those scenarios. Is that?
It's not only making a decision, it's having the discussion.
Right, exactly.
So it's both.
Right.
But yes, you just have to make sure that you're not collectively sharing your opinions on this before.
Right. But for example, let's say, because if I'm wrong on this part, I'd love to know. Let's say there's some issue we're going to, buy a new vehicle, and I feel strongly about it. I can individually talk to each other member of the board and say, I, Oscar, think this is a bad idea, right? That doesn't have any open meeting law implications.
Right. The issue is when you say, I think this is a bad idea, and Isaac thinks so too.
Right, because now a quorum of us are kind of...
And then you go to, then you're basically speaking for 2 of you by sharing his opinion in that conversation.
Right. Great. Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Have any questions? Anyone from the public? Gentlemen?
Yeah, I have a question for the town attorneys, if that's okay.
Yes.
I'm curious if, because there are restrictions on electronic communications, is there any way for a warned meeting to take place electronically, say through a text forum, where that meeting would essentially remain open so that discussions and deliberations could take place on an asynchronous basis without having to go through the formal process of opening and closing a meeting?
Well, you have to be able to record it and take minutes and provide for public participation, so an asynchronous conversation would be difficult to achieve.
Well, that's why I'm specifying it in like a text forum where there would automatically be a full text record of it.
I think that there might be public accommodations issues with that as well.
Yeah.
And the warning of it for a particular time and date and location bit.
Yeah.
So perhaps technology in our legislature will someday get there, but for right now, we're constrained.
That's why I'm asking, because this area of technology is actually my specialty, and it's something that I want to work on so that we can improve our communications in our municipal and state politics. Thanks.
Gary?
Just wanted to ask in regards to that, since we have a huge social media platform, not just here, but abroad, when you're dealing with Front Porch Forum and there's replies, but there's no way to BCC, because you could BCC someone and still not be considered having a open meeting. Correct me if I'm wrong with that. And secondly, if you're meeting somewhere in a tea room or somewhere like that, I mean, there's no buffers, there's no way of knowing. So that being said, even with AI saying, nope, you can't do that. We haven't created anything in that sense. How do you, I mean, they say discretion is the better part of valor. Be able to know yourself if you're not violating that particular open meeting law.
I'm sorry, I don't really understand the question.
Well, if you're going on Porch Forum, there's no reply. There's no BCC, so I can't BCC. So even on Brattleboro, if you go on there, you're replying to someone's rebuttal or editorial or whatever's being said, there's that conversation of that string going on it. Doesn't that negate that being an open meeting of people discussing the same topic?
Just to be clear, it needs public body to discuss a public business, a quorum. So if individual people are responding, that's not a meeting. And BCC does not get around open meeting law. You can't just BCC and think that doesn't count.
Okay, because I've known to say send it BCC, so that way you're not saying everybody's replying back all.
That does help with that, but the initial sending of a BCC does not make it a.
It's still another member having knowledge of what you said.
Right.
Correct. Yep.
It's
okay.
Sneaky.
Right.
Oscar.
Yes. Well, okay. Hopefully I'll remember my second question, but my first one is, okay. So my point to Gary, and just again to confirm that the reason there could be a problem in the comments of, let's say, an Brattleboro article is because if 3 or 4 or 5 of us get in there and argue with each other, we're essentially having a discussion in an unwarned setting. And particularly if we get to the end of it and say, like, oh, great, we all agree now, we'll take this action, we've violated the public's right to know what's going on. I haven't thought about this in a while, and I haven't, taken advantage of this, but my understanding from my committee days was that it was really the reply to the first email that really got you into that dangerous discussion territory. So, for example, if I wanted to say to the Finance Committee, here's my latest draft for you to look at for tomorrow's meeting, and send it to the whole committee a quorum, as long as nobody replied to the group and started a group discussion, that was fine.
Yeah, disseminating information for a meeting is one of the exceptions.
Great. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Are we good? I want to thank you both very much.
Yes.
All right. Let's see. Item D, revised FY27 Select Board General Fund Budget. John, take it away.
Yes, thank you. So at the board's January 22nd meeting last Thursday, a motion passed to approve the budget with 3 changes, putting recycling and compost back in the budget, eliminating the finance clerk half position, and taking the human services budget to 0. At that meeting, I calculated a rough number on the fly while we were here, which is lower than what staff have subsequently recalculated as the total expenditure. This discrepancy had to do with sort of the complexity of taking out and putting in all the elements related to the 3 streams of solid waste and adjusting the bag prices and all that. So for transparency, I'm bringing a revised budget back to the board for confirmation and approval before we publish the town report. On last Thursday, I had said that the solid waste putback would be an addition of $577,682. When we recalculated it with all of the workforce model being run and the staffing and everything put back in, it came at $701,762. That's what's in your packet. As I mentioned in my comments earlier, Pete Lynch looked at this and he came up with a way to reduce the solid waste putback further. And I believe he'd be available to share that thought with you all tonight. There is a updated budget that you have at your desks, and there's also some copies that Seth has over at the side table, which would make that solid waste putback be about a little more than $100,000 less than what was recalculated. So it would be $600,102. Which gets you to a total FY27 budget of $27,040,801, which would result in the need for property tax increase over FY26 of $1,244,592, which would be a 6.3% increase on the current taxes. I'm happy to answer any questions about that, or if you would like to hear from Pete about his thoughts on how we found an additional savings on the solid waste side.
Well, I think it's important to hear from Pete. Is it, everybody agree? Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Pete.
Good evening. Thanks for having me again this evening. I'm happy to talk about how we came to the difference in the number, or I'm happy to cut straight to the solution, whatever your preference.
I vote for the solution.
Okay. So once again, we took another hard look at the solid waste budget, all three streams, to see if there was anywhere that we could find additional savings. And while this is becoming terribly difficult at this point to come up with something, we discovered that if we were to defer the automated recycling pickup, that's the truck that picks up from the carts on the street, if we were to defer that and continue with manual pickup for a period of 5 months at the beginning of the fiscal year, that we could realize about $100,000 savings. And I'm happy to go through line by line and discuss what those are. But in their totality, it comes to about $100,000. And that would have little or no effect on the user base as we see it today. It would be exactly the same on July 1st that it is right now. And the transition to carts with automated pickup would happen 5 months from then. And we've begun to enter into conversation with all the parties that would be effective, and we think this is going to be a positive outcome if you so choose to do it.
Super. Any questions for Pete on the board?
I have no questions, but gosh, I really thank you for taking the time, working through the weekend, John said, to get it done, and also the delay on the carts. It's great news to me.
We should appreciate finance, too. They were heavily involved in this.
Thank you, finance.
Anyone else?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Not about this, but I might as well say, I think the more we can do our job without ego and with humor, the better. So we might as well recognize that on Thursday, Kate told us that we should wait for a revised budget to come back, and we voted for it anyway, and now here we are. So Kate's in the audience. Thank you, Kate, and thank you for your email reminding me with the smiley face earlier today.
Isn't that nice? She told me in person, face to face, unapologetic.
Was there a smiley face in person?
No.
Okay, well, and, we all can have stickers that say, I told you so, but I think we're trying to work together here. Mm-hmm. And I think it was important for us to make the decisions that we made last week, and then also important for us to see, that brought out. So let's have you stay there for a little while, Pete, and then we'll see if members of the public. Well, and first of all, is there anyone who wants to interrogate John on the budget refinements as a whole on the board? And then seeing none, let's see if anyone from the public has comments on either the final budget as a whole or Pete's particular area of interest. Go right ahead. I see Heidi and then Dick.
Heidi Fisher, District 7. Just a question for Pete, but I'll direct it to you. Except I can't see you because this is totally in my line of vision. So by delaying the carts for 5 months, I think you said, saves us a lot of money. Can we delay the carts, period, and longer, and not have to pay extra money?
let's ask Pete, obviously this is part of the negotiations and we've been delaying and delaying and delaying. So what do you think our contractor will bear?
So this has been part of the discussion since last March, and we were quite grateful to be able to eliminate the carts from trash pickup. We worked really hard to get to a point where we were down to one cart at each household, and while we will continue to do our best to put together a final contract that will work for everybody, I'm not sure at this point that the total removal of carts is going to happen.
So I would imagine that you would say that this is something that is yet to be negotiated, but certainly we can put this to rest for at least for a little while before we start deliberating again.
Correct.
Thank you. Dick, you have comments?
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I think what's happening here just underscores the fact of how important it is to have a finance director sitting here. I'm not sure why we didn't have Ms. Batchelder here last Thursday assisting us and assisting John. And the other thing that I brought up a couple of months ago or a month ago is this gentleman over here to my left. It's great to pat somebody on the back, but not giving him a stipend for all the work that he's done for this community. He deserves something, and you should amend this budget and put some sort of stipend in this budget for all the work that he's done for the town in the past year. Thank you.
All right. Is there someone online? Oh, we have Millicent and Fidel. I assume that that's David. So who's first? Is that David is first?
David was first.
Okay, David.
Mark District 9. I certainly cannot object to the idea of saving $100,000 in the coming fiscal year. But as Heidi's question suggested, that $100,000 is going to come back next year. And so the challenge will be for the next select board to be really tough on the budget from the get-go. Thank you.
Millicent?
Oh, thank you. Can you hear me? Okay. And thanks to John and team for all that work. I could tell on my end how much work was going on. It's really intense to do that much in this short of a time from the last select board meeting. I am asking this in my role on the finance committee. Yesterday evening, our committee looked at the new budget version that is being shared tonight, and we have a question. There appears to be a discrepancy of $2,022,889 when you compare the total town revenues for fiscal year 26 actuals that appear in the general fund budget versus those same actuals that appear in the finance report 5 months ending November. So if you want, I can point out the pages and where you could find that exactly. I don't know if you want me to give you that now, but the general fund budget says total revenue actuals for FY26 of 24,600,000 plus, and the finance report says 22,022,000 plus for the same data point. So just, wondering why those numbers are different. Yeah.
And John, do you want to answer that now, or do you want to?
Sure, I can.
Speak to
Yep.
it? Yeah.
So the numbers, the actual numbers are calculated on the fly out of OpenGov, so they are up to date through January 22nd, 2026, and you're comparing those against numbers that are through the end of November 2025. So between November to the end of January, we've had additional revenues come into the town, and those are reflected in the new numbers. It's
so
just,
there's been
it's
$2
just,
million. There's been $2 million of revenue, and that revenue shows up on OpenGov.
Yep.
Okay. Oh.
Yep.
Okay,
And
up to the minute.
I'm assuming that would come from, without having found it, that would come from like a big chunk of rooms and meals tax, or a payment of that type.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I'll poke around.
And those
tax.
numbers have not been checked yet, but
Right.
they're what the system is showing. So there's sometimes corrections that are made before Bonnie publishes her monthly report to you. So.
All right, so are there further comments? Are there, yes, sir?
Pierre Landry, District 7. I was unable to attend the last meeting when a lot of the waste stream discussions were happening, and I know there was talk about keeping recycling and compost out of the budget. And I just have to say this, because I guess, you know, I've gone to a lot of select board meetings. I went to the informational session at the library, and the select board for a long time has been discussing what a financial crisis we're in as a town. And to keep, I don't know the numbers off the top of my head, $500,000 for recycling and compost, curbside pickup, which everyone claims, oh, we got the Cadillac of, you know, the waste stream in Vermont. Well, we can't afford a Cadillac anymore. And I just can't understand why we have to make a decision to have curbside recycling and compost where it's just as easy to spend $50 on a sticker to go to Wyndham Solid Waste. We can't please everybody in town. I know that certain people might not have a vehicle or this or that. We can't please everybody. And we know what's going to happen at town meeting. Human Resources is going to come back in for another $500,000. And, you know, the tax rate, you can throw this out the window because it's just going to jump. Thank you.
You need a motion. Yep.
Yeah. Would someone like to make a motion?
Sure.
Oscar?
I move to approve the revised FY27 general fund budget and capital plan as presented.
Thank you. John, do we have to specify as presented from this hot off the press version? Is there
Yeah.
some way to differentiate that?
So it's the one I described to you. I read the numbers of the total budget off, and it would be in the record.
Okay, very good.
Yep.
All right. Oscar has moved to approve the revised FY27 general fund budget and capital plan as presented this evening by John Potter. All select board members in favor of this motion, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All select board members not in favor, please raise your hand and say no.
No.
Okay, that's 4-1 with Isaac being the one.
Thank you, Pete.
Dissent.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Peter. All right, let's see. The next item is
Town audit.
town audit update?
Yeah. And
Yes,
Yeah, I had actually wanted to speak to that.
the budget?
Yeah. Is this the time to do it, or should I do it at the beginning of the next meeting? Or?
Ask if anyone
I-
had any comments
I-
on the
I-
budget before I lend it out to the public.
I do have comments, but if you prefer, I can wait till the next meeting. It's not a problem.
Okay.
Seth, is Bonnie on the line? No. Okay. I wasn't sure if she was going to join us, so I will do this one.
Okay, very good.
All right. So we've been struggling to find an auditor to do the FY25 audit and single audit. And the town has sent 3 rounds of requests for proposals out. And the first 2 rounds went unanswered. We had nobody responding or even asking questions about it. We tried a third attempt, which the responses were due last Friday before we published this information, and we fortunately got 1 response, and that came in Friday before the end of the day. And the quote that we got was good for FY25, FY26, and FY27. And the proposal meets our requirements, and the auditor that responded can begin the end of April or early May. And we would be able to have our audit done by the end of the fiscal year and then be on target for the FY26 audit starting in the normal time that we now have an auditor on board. We will bring that contract for you to approve, but essentially it looks like we do now have an auditor, which is fantastic. We will comply with reporting requirements in the town report. We'll have Bonnie's firm draft the financial statements for the government, all the government fund statements to be included in that report, but they will be marked as unaudited. They will be good numbers. They just will not have had an independent third-party review of them, which this successful RFP will be able to allow us to do that by the end of the fiscal year. So that is the update on the town audit saga, and I'd be happy to try to answer any questions that you have about that.
Well, congratulations. It does sound like a saga. Are there anyone from the select board who would like to make comments?
Just that that's great, and that I thought we would be getting a less happy update today, so this is great.
Yep.
John, will you repeat when the auditor for hire will start the work again? Will you repeat that one more time?
Yeah, the end of April, early May. So a lot of our issues in finding someone was that everyone's engaged already and they have multi-year contracts with other towns. And I learned in this process that there are a number of other towns who are in the same boat, and they've been unable to find auditors as well. So we're not unique. It's just I would suggest anyone in high school or college who wants to get into a nice business, this would be one to do, because this is going to cost us more than we normally have been paying for this. So.
And how long will the process take once it's initiated?
2 to 3 months, typically,
Okay.
depending on their other obligations.
And is it a contract or is the person paid per hour?
It is a contract. It's a lump sum amount, and they come to our offices, they go through all the books, they ask random questions, they pull files, that kind of thing, just to make sure that they
can
meet their
sign off,
standards
right?
and they sign off on it.
So in previous meetings, you mentioned that Bonnie's going to prepare prepare documents so they're really efficient, they're ready to go and efficient, which will save time for the auditor.
Yeah.
Do we see any cost savings with those efforts that she's going to engage in?
No, we didn't.
Okay.
And just to make sure I understand, so we will essentially be offering a 3-year contract to do the current outstanding audit, the budget year that we're in, and the budget that we just approved.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Great.
Yep.
Gentleman to my left.
I'm happy.
I'm happy that you're happy.
I mean, if you can be happy about auditors,
Isaac, do you have a comment?
Well, thank you, Town Manager Potter.
Okay, so anyone from the public want to make a comment about the arrival of an auditor? Great. All right. Shall we move on? Okay, the 2026 warning for annual town meeting and representative town meeting. John, you want to present this?
Yeah, so you discussed this at your last meeting. You discussed drafts of these at your last meeting. And in your packet, I wasn't totally clear on the direction for how to order things on the RTM warning. So I brought back 2 versions of that with the articles in slightly different orders for you to consider. But first, your attachment A in the backup is the annual town meeting warning, which has your article on discontinuance of RTM plus the 2 charter petitions that you heard about earlier this evening. That has not changed. I would hope that you could adopt that tonight. Actually, I hope you adopt both of these tonight because we really need to get them warned. But the other warning is for the representative town meeting, and you'll see that there are two versions that I supplied you. One has the first one, version A, has your, that's on page 90, has all of your sort of discretionary articles following the budget article. So Article 5 in this one is your budget article. Then, as you requested, I put an Article 6 in here that addresses the human services budget. You have it in, you have the human services in at 0 in your budget currently, but in order to put an article on the warning, the town attorney suggested that we start with the sum of $1 because you can't really put a $0 article on the warning. So we did that, and then also moved the 3 exemption articles that you also discussed at your last meeting following the budget as well. And then version B, which is on page 92, has the same 14 articles, or 13 articles, I guess, 13 articles in it. They're all the same ones, they're just in a different order. And in this particular case, the exemptions and then the $1 article on the Human Services Committee all come before the budget article. So it kind of just separates it in that order. And yeah, I'm happy to answer any questions about that. If you do a motion on this, it'd be helpful to know which version you want to do for the RTM warning.
Okay, so just before we start, we have version A, version B, and this one that you handed out would be C.
There is a board member approached me about a possible 3rd version, which we drafted. That was Peter, and we drafted that version also for your consideration. It's not in the backup. There are copies that Seth has over on the table, and there is a copy at each of your desks.
so should I start with that
Please,
motion? And then we can, begin to drill into it. So I'm going to motion that we accept version A of this, and then I want to speak to this. I'm going to motion that we accept A and strike Article 6 from the articles.
And that gives us this, right?
And that gives us that new place. Now, so that is my motion. And I will now speak to that motion.
Please.
So the idea of sort of what happened last year in the process was we failed a budget and then added $500,000 back into a failed budget. To me, that feels sideways. That feels upside down. That doesn't feel right. So what I am hoping to do is to have this conversation about the human services budget from the floor during the budget process so that we can restore funding to the human services based on the will of RTM or OTM or whatever we end up with, and be able to pass that number as a whole. We talk a lot up here about the responsibility that the select board has, about budgeting responsibly. I would also like us to see and come up with a solid number, a fixed number that we can rely on and not a percentage. That would be also one of my goals. My intention wasn't to solely lower, was to lower the number for human services, but not eliminate it. That mechanism here allows us to put a number back into the budget that is workable, that the town can survive on, that the town can sustain. The five of us here, or whatever body sits up here, are the people who are responsible directly for putting this budget out to RTM. And if we don't have that control over that number or some say or influence over that number, it really, I'm discovering after my third, going on my fourth go around with getting budgets approved, finding and seeing that as being sort of really being handicapped a little bit. So my proposal, my motion tonight wouldn't strike the conversation. It would move it into the budgeting line item for conversation and consideration, but I would want that to happen. And I would want RTM or OTM, whatever we end up with, to make that distinction with the understanding of what the final consequences are and not failing a budget because of one reason, only to add this massive amount back into the other end. So that is my reasoning behind this.
Great. Do any of my colleagues want to speak to Peter's motion?
Thinking.
Well, I think Peter's motion has a lot of merit. I think that the idea of consolidating the discussion into the general budget would allow for an open forum for the same purpose versus one version of approving the general fund budget by the body, the town meeting, and then having human services budget afterwards, which would change the amount of everyone's tax bill. That was one version. Or the opposite, doing human services first and then the general budget. I think combining them, it makes a lot of sense. And it after hearing the public hearings about what the body's deciding, it consolidates it into one process, which I think is understandable. And I think it's clear. And I think it's kind of brings people together better to have that discussion. So that's my perspective.
Yeah, Amanda, I would agree because, right now it's a disjointed. And, people have said to me that this issue was just tearing the town apart. The goodwill versus, the fiscal responsibility is, we need to have that conversation at one time and discuss it together so that the people who are advocating for human services are directly engaged in the entire budget discussion, and that the consequences are directly related to whatever decisions are being made, and not in this. We had so many daggers over our head last year when the budget was voted down. But one thing was clear, that whatever it is that we did, there was another $500,000 that needed to be tacked onto it. And this way, Peter's way, is a way to have a discussion that's of a whole cloth. Isaac?
Yeah, I understand the sentiment and the concerns that this proposal attempts to address. I have two concerns about it. One is that we already basically decided this whenever we had our last meeting. That's why version A is what we discussed and decided on. And so I think after the board voted to, in a very close vote, devoted to move that human service funding to zero, we said, okay, well, we'll keep this article on here to allow for that separate discussion. This, I believe, is going to prompt 2 town meetings this spring, because it's hard for me to imagine that town meeting, whether it's representative or open, is going to accept $0 for human services after having advised us as a select board to have 2% of the budget, which would be over $500,000. $500,000 to $0 is a huge jump. So I would suspect that town meeting would say, no, we're going to amend this budget and say we want more money and advise for that human service spending to be greater. And then what would happen is, I believe the next select board would then have to take this budget and would have to redo the budget, could take that advice and do what they like with that advice, and then there'd have to be another town meeting to approve that. So we'd be repeating what we just did last year. And we just heard a bunch of people say they don't want to have town meeting anymore. And now we're talking about essentially guaranteeing 2 town meetings this spring. So I think the wise thing to do, if we want to have an efficient process, is to leave version A. If you want to do version B, switch the order of the articles, that's fine. But we need to be able to have this discussion, and I hope that we can look at what the Charter Revision Committee has come to get, the Commission has come up with, and think about how we make these decisions. But to completely wipe out the human service funding from the budget and then take out this article that we've just added in, I don't think that's headed in the right direction.
Peter, do you want to clarify?
I'm a little confused. I'm not avoiding the conversation around the human budget, around the human services budgeting. I'm basically saying I want it moved up to where we actually discuss the budget.
Mm-hmm.
And if town meeting chooses to put money back in, then that's where we do it. It's not, I'm not.
I got you, but then we have to come back again. The 10-10 town meeting then has to come back and approve that budget, doesn't it?
No.
They can vote
That's
on it
what
from
we're
the floor.
doing.
Oh, because last year they just outright rejected it.
Yeah, they outright rejected it, then tacked in $500,000 after rejecting a budget. And I mean,
So you can propose an amendment to the budget. Mr. Landry could propose to cut the solid waste.
I still think we risk then getting the whole budget rejected more by having, by changing this process. Oh, I'm
So, no, I interrupted you, I apologize. No, I mean, I see it differently. I see somebody, Gemma, I'm just going to use you because you've been vocal about it. Gemma stands up and says, we're going to add 2% back into the budget, but we're having that conversation. We're looking at whatever the number is, and we're saying, the proposal is to add X number, $500,000 into the budget. We're doing that during the budget. And we play, let's make a deal with the budget. We get the human services down to the original proposed $250,000. And that's what we have in, but now we've done that collectively. And that's the number that everybody has the buy-in to. And then we can take that and say, okay, we're all comfortable with this. This is going to be the final number. This is the impact on the municipal tax. Can we approve this? Yes. It all happens in that conversation. That's all. I'm not, again, I know there's been, I've heard from a few people about my proposal. My proposal was not this callous, harsh thing to make sure that nobody got funded. It was a way to help us sort of streamline the process, get the buy-in that we need, and get people to understand that budgeting process a little better. So if we separate these two conversations, then it becomes this thing that's unwieldy. Now, during the next year, we do need to come up with a better mechanism, I do believe, and I would like to see us sort of settle on a flat number that we know going into the next budgeting season. I think that's a little bit more responsible. So, did that clear anything up for you? Does that make you feel any different about it?
It's helpful to understand that reminder of the process.
All right.
I didn't see this wasn't part of the packet that I got ahead of time, so I'm just kind of digesting this thing that I thought we had decided last week.
Yes, we all are. Yes.
Yeah.
Oscar, do you have a comment?
Sure. I don't know. I the more I think about this, I don't think it's a life or death decision. Town meeting, there's a lot of institutional knowledge there. People are pretty savvy. We already know people who are going to make an amendment about this if it's in the general budget question. The conversation's going to happen. My two reservations, and they're small, are this does feel like another little way in which we're just kind of tugging something else out of RTM's hands, which doesn't feel great.
I'm sorry, Oscar, we're tugging what? I didn't catch that.
So in the spring, RTM voted on a number, and now this year we're saying, actually, we think it should be different, even though you directed us, and now we're saying this was its separate article where people could have this separate conversation, but now we're going to put it in with them. It feels like another case, a small case where we're saying, actually, RTM, we know best. People made comments last time about the select board needs sort of more control over that process and taking control. I don't really want to do things that go that direction. I don't think that's your goal. So that's one reservation. It's a small one. The other small reservation is just, we know this fight is coming. We know it's going to be protracted. It seems kind of nice to have it in a separate place. Nobody's going to be confused and think it doesn't go into the budget. Instead, we're going to do it as it's going to be one of probably several amendments in the main budget article, and we're going to have somebody, probably John, with a pad of paper saying, okay, we put this much back in here, so the tax rate was this, and now this new amendment wants to do this other thing, and now we have a third amendment. I kind of feel like we're making our lives more difficult, so I don't know. I don't feel strongly, slightly leaning against, but not in an upset way.
Yeah. Again, to me, if it's right on the budget line, it's more inclusive. It involves everybody. If we separate it out, it is just going to involve the people who are interested in funding human services. This will include everybody. those who maybe want to fund human services at a lower level, maybe want to fund human services at a higher level. So the idea is that we come collectively, regardless of what body meets, discuss this thing, and honestly, just feel good about it and know what the consequences is and the impact is, instead of just going, okay, we've failed the budget, let's add money back in. Or we've passed the budget, let's add money back in. It just feels upside down to me to not know what that final number is when we are finished with the budgeting conversation. And we can do the math on the fly and say it's 2% and then work it back in. But I think that's sort of like deep breath, we got it, exhale, we don't have it because we have to add this back in and that's going to have this impact. So I'm just trying to make it a little bit more of a cohesive process that has everybody who shows up having buy-in and some piece of making the decision. And that's been a lot of what's been discussed tonight, making a decision on our town budget and our future town budget. So that is my proposal.
I think that's a reasonable.
And we're going to feel
idea.
good about it, Peter?
I'm sorry?
You said we were going to feel good about it?
We're going to feel great about it.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree with Peter in that the time is now, and I think all of us at this table agree that we have to minimize the amount of inherent conflict that we are experiencing within our community, the way we govern, the way we sit at this table. And that if this is a step towards integrating people of many different opinions and interests to sit at the same table, to be able to have a conversation about what they want to see in this budget, rather than a structure that's bringing arguments. Arguments are fine, but bringing discord, we just got to come together. This conversation could be followed by a motion of the select board to appropriate funds to human services, just here at this table, even, that would come into the budget. It doesn't have to be the zero that we ended the last budget with. So I'm just throwing that out there, that's a possibility that we could even do at this table.
You mean for FY27 or for next year? Like next?
No, for FY27, one of us could make a motion to appropriate.
Okay, well, let's
so these are all options that for us as a select board, but I think that Peter brings a really great idea.
Okay, so let's just keep with the motion at hand for the time being. And the thing that I like about it the most is that it takes people out of their silos and has this unified discussion, which I think there's tremendous amount of merit and goodwill towards. But shall we hear the myriad opinions that there are in the community about this matter? I'm going to start with the people. Yes?
I'd like to hear from the Charter Review Commission folks, I know this is a surprise, but if they are interested in speaking to this, I would be interested to hear, because they mentioned they have been working on the process.
Well, yes, they have, and I think some of us who are familiar with the charter changes know what they have been draft. But again, they're on hold right now, and I'm sure if Kate has something to say, she will say it. So let's open it up to the public, and for a change of pace, let's start with the people online.
David Lovenbach, District 9. I'm in the unhappy position of agreeing with some people that I generally disagree with, but I think it only makes sense to talk about the human services as part of the entire budget. I'm not particularly sympathetic to the argument that charity begins at home, but I will say when I make my charitable contributions, I make them in the context of my overall finances. And I think it's only appropriate that the town do the same thing. The other thing I just want to get down on the record is the select boards in the past have honored the decisions of RTM on this and related matters, so that if RTM comes in with whatever amount they propose should be spent for human services, I think the expectation is that the select board will honor that. Thank you very much. Good night.
Thank you. Andy?
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for revisiting this. This is definitely a tough one, but I sort of like the dynamism of reopening this as an issue. I have spoken for putting the human services budget in the overall budget, and I've even sent some materials out in support of that. You all had a specific goal for the overall budget increase. I believe it was trying to keep it under 6%. Do I remember that correctly?
Correct, Andy.
So what concerns me, and maybe it's similar to what Peter is saying, that if you put this 0% out at a town meeting and say, what do you all think about it? You could get $500,000 out of that body, kind of on ideological grounds, certainly not on budgetary grounds. I really do think you have to look at the whole budget and I use the phrase, take a stand. What do you think could be supported in relation to your overall goal of trying to control the budget increase, which is what's disturbing so many people in town? Could $200,000 fit into that as a kind of compromise? 250, 180. Pick a number. That's why I was a tad shocked and disappointed at the 0. I guess the purpose was to open up this conversation. And I hear what you're saying, Peter. I think that that's well intended. But when you look at the goal that you've struggled to meet, it seems like you're just behind door number 3, as God knows what's behind there. The context of this whole decision is the struggle to control the increase of the town budget. Don't forget that the second article last year, the wording, I rechecked it, it was to spend up to 2%. It's not a requirement. It was an advisory article. And if we, inherited a fortune in the meantime, we could do the up to 2%. After watching your budget process, yeah. So I say, why 0? Why not take a stand on what you all believe we can do it and then defend it at town meeting? And I think there's a lot of reasonable people at town meeting you would find that would support you. Thank you.
Thank you. Robin?
I wouldn't go away. Sure. Oh, no, there she is.
Yeah, I think I'm understanding that you guys are talking about taking out the separate article for people to vote on human services funding altogether, and that then you're going to allow the representative or town meeting body to vote on the budget that you decide, whatever number that you put in there, which right now is at 0. Is that right?
No, I think we, at least my intention is that we would walk into the floor with that starting at 0, and then sort of accept the proposals from the floor, but do it during the budgeting process, so that we're not, so that we have I feel we would have a better chance and having more people buy in to what Amanda said is, there's been a lot of contention around this, and just sort of come together as a town to make this decision collectively. So whatever that being, if the larger portion body accepts it, that's what we go with.
During the budgeting process, you mean like the budgeting process that's happening right now? Or are you talking about the discussion at the meeting?
Discussion at the meeting.
This is confusing to me why you're taking it off of being a separate article, because it seems to me that the only reason to do that and not have it be a separate article is because then you don't have to follow the will of the vote. It's at your discretion. If you put it as a separate article, then the select board has to fund whatever amount is voted on by the people. But if you have it as just a discussion within the budget article, then it's advisory. So you're relying on the people's trust to follow through with that you're going to follow through with their will, but you already aren't doing that by the fact that you're trying to propose this as a $0 item when people told you how much they wanted to spend on it.
All right. Well, no, I mean, I'm happy to address that, and it sounds like to me like we've got a little bit of mistrust. Now, I will tell you, Robin, that if even as an advisory, if town meeting told us to restore the human services budget to its previous form, that is what the body said, that is what this board should do, and I would defend that. So my proposal is honest and true in that I want this discussion to be part of the budget process so that we all understand how it impacts the budget. I said last year that we failed the budget and then added in $500,000 to a already failed budget. So understanding where we are fiscally is important. This is a big line item in our fiscal budget. So I want to make sure that everybody understands what it is, what impact it has, and what good it can do. So I'm not sure that I've convinced you of anything, but that is my sincere belief.
Okay. I wonder if it would be helpful to interrogate Bob and Hannah about Robin's question at this time. Would that be helpful?
Well, I think we already clarified that last year was advisory. Is there more to discuss on that?
The recommendation regarding this year's fiscal budget was advisory. And it is correct that if it is voted on separately, that is binding in terms of for that year. But the recommendation for the future year is not, that was an advisory vote.
Thank you. All right.
Sorry. Well, there were two things there. If it's a separate article on the human service funding, and whatever amount is voted there, that's binding. If it's part of the budget, then that's just a number that there's a motion to amend the budget. Let's say it's increased by X number of dollars to add back in human service funding. That's part of the overall budget. It's up to you as a select board as to how you are then appropriating it. So theoretically, at the risk of yourself not getting reelected the following year, you could say, well, despite the vote by the majority to put it back in, we're not going to do that. You run, the check and balance on that is the electoral process. But Peter, what you're saying is that you would abide by what the voters would be recommending.
I mean,
or voting.
I'm assuming that's what they want. That's what we should deliver. Is there a precedent where an advisory amount has been assigned and then?
So the advisory amount is separate.
Yeah.
So the advisory amount is what RTM says last year, what you should put in the budget for this year.
Right.
That was an advisory vote of last year's RTM regarding this year's budget. But what we're talking about is the difference between including it as a separate article or including it in the overall budget, because the overall budget is just an amount, and then the select board decides how to appropriate it. So there is that risk, like Bob's saying, that even if this board were saying they were going to abide by that choice to appropriate those funds, there's no mandate that you do so unless it's voted on separately.
And Fish, it sounded like your question was is there a history that anyone knows of in Brattleboro of town meeting amending the budget, saying what it was for, and the select board not doing that?
Right.
And I don't, but
I
my
can't,
memory doesn't stretch.
I mean, that would have been something me personally sitting in the peanut gallery would have raised holy hell about but that's just me. And you know, I mean, that won't happen on my watch. But I'm only one vote.
I can't think of one myself.
No.
I just wanted to point out the distinction that if it's a separate article on human services, then that's binding.
Right.
And then, but that gets into the whole thing that you're
But it's not
discussing
part of
as
the
a
budget
policy
conversation.
issue of whether or not to talk about it all as one article on how much the town is going to spend on everything versus everything and then human services. So.
Right.
Can I ask a quick question?
Of course.
Maybe it might save some heartache and some questions for the public if we were just clear now. If we put this all in one article, is this board comfortable committing that if RTM amends that budget and they advise us on what it's for, like Peter's saying, that we will honor that? I think if we can make that commitment as a board, a lot of worries go away. I'm certainly comfortable saying that.
We're all presupposing that there's RTM.
Either form of town meeting. Right. So, is that something that we can just say and be comfortable with? I'm happy to say that.
My concern is that the makeup of RTM members and the makeup of open town meeting members would be different.
Well, but we're redrafting this whole thing anyway if there's open town meeting, right?
Yeah.
So,
I'm just saying it's a different question.
Yes.
So to answer Oscar's question, yes. I mean, if the body put this number together, I would assume again in the spirit of collective decision making that we could settle on a number that we would all live with, and then we would put that number into action.
All right, let's hear from the public, shall we? Oh gosh, everybody raised their hand. Let's hear from David first because he's got skin in the game.
Don't have any more skin, I think, than a lot of organizations have. Oscar, I think, asked a very sincere question. What would each of you do if, in fact, it was raised, 1%, 2%, whatever?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, I've heard one answer.
What's that?
I've heard one answer. I think Oscar said yes. I think Peter said yes.
Yeah, I'll certainly abide by the terms of RTM.
Okay.
But the point is that the discussion would be within the context of the budget as a whole, rather than be a separate number.
Well, I think the concern is that exactly as Bob was describing, is that it becomes advisory. And if, in fact, it becomes advisory, then we sit around and wait for what? The new board to come up and say, yes, it's a go or it's a no-go. I have a question as to Human Services has gone through and has reviewed all the applications, and we're sitting and waiting for a decision to go move forward, or I guess not to move forward if it's zero. So I ask you, what would be the next step? What would be the final step? And does any decision as to the amount of individual grants, does that need to come back before any body for approval?
When you say the individual grants, you mean how your committee allocates them?
Yes.
The way that we've done that through vote at RTM was to establish your committee and have your committee do the allocation. So to play this out, if it's part of the overall budget, okay, and somebody comes in and they move to amend the budget upwards of some dollar amount, which includes, but let's just for argument's sake say $200,000, all right? So the budget's increased by $200,000 and that's your overall budget. If that passes, then you're going to have a new select board, okay? The select board then can say, okay, we've heard what happened at town meeting, Now we want to allocate that amount. That new select board can tell your committee, go ahead and do the allocation. Okay, and that should be done prior to July 1st, so that as far as, I don't know when the funding actually gets distributed out, but when it's obviously after July 1st.
Yeah, it would be after July 1st, and the board could say, look, now town meeting has told you $200,000 to Human Services, give that to, allocate that to the Human Services Committee to distribute how they see fit.
Mm-hmm. All right.
But again, though, it becomes advisory for the next board, and the next board need not necessarily accept what that advisory was, and they can just kind of lump it into the budget. Right?
Theoretically, yes, but
we're all chasing our tails.
And this board can't bind the next board with regard, but each member here is giving his or her intent as if that member is on the next board.
The numbers may be different. So anyway, we continue to chase our tail.
Okay, Ivan, Gemma, now, Kate, and Randy too.
Ivan Hennessy, Brattleboro, Vermont. There was some discussion, who knows when, about having the Human Services article before the general budget article. My understanding is that it would then be voted on before the full budget and would be settled. Is there any reason that the conversation around a Human Services article before the general budget article can't include a discussion of its impact on the general budget, so that people going into that vote would understand exactly how it affects the final budget? Or is that something that there's a procedural rule of some sort against?
I don't know about it.
I don't know. Yeah, I mean, there's procedure rules, but I've been to, at least a decade of town meetings, and each budget discussion, both the Human Services and the general budget, are wild and variable. And having those two discussions co-joined just makes a lot of sense, because really, I think the human service budget is in its own silo and not given the greater understanding of the budget as a whole. Oscar?
I think Ivan makes a reasonable point, which is what I think would happen in Article 6 to discuss human services, is that either as part of the tee-up, or someone would ask the question, okay, I want to amend it to $250K, and then somebody else would say, what does that do to the tax rate? So we would absolutely have the conversation in the context of what it does to the budget. We do not need to combine these items to understand how it works. Again, yeah, so I think it's a perfectly reasonable question. I think we will get to the end either way, and I'm feeling more and more like we're just making something advisory that has always been binding. Why? It feels like, that feeling of tugging away to a body that we're already a little bit antagonizing and we are answerable to. So,
are we antagonizing them by trying to get rid of them?
I have a point of
It's the vote.
I have a point of order question.
Mm-hmm.
I just found the proposed articles that we discussed, and I had to understand that we voted on these at our last meeting on the 22nd.
You did not. I think we did head nods. No vote.
They were to be brought back tonight, which here they are. All right, I have a list of people who wish to speak.
Before may I say something from the select board?
Pardon me?
A select board comment? I'd love to make a select,
Sure.
So first of all, I just want to say that this process is incredibly helpful and valuable for what Ivan just brought up. I think that's a very, very valid point. In terms of, in the context of the budget, we talk about what could be added to the budget. So what we're talking about right now is everyone getting along better, everyone working together, everyone listening to each other, right? It might not go this way that Peter suggested. Our vote might not go that way, but that doesn't mean that this discussion wasn't critically important to put context into our budget, how we allocate human services funding, how we allocate our dollars. So I really like, what I don't want to happen is that this devolve into the bitter arguments that sometimes our select board gatherings and comments can bring. Like, let's not go there. Let's stay high and keep working on this general idea. Okay? Yes? Okay, great. That's all.
I think if I could just put it, I think all the versions of everybody who has spoken tonight is really what I'm trying to do, but I'm just trying to make it part of the budget process. So that's where I would like to see it discussed.
Great. Shall we continue? Let's see. David, Ivan, Gemma. Then Nell, Kate, and Randy.
I don't know why we are reopening this discussion. I am not in favor of this motion for the very simple reason that I would be in favor of discussing it as part of the general budget if there were any possibility at all that the general budget were going to change as part of that discussion. This budget has been combed and groomed to death. There is no room in it for anything else. Everything that needed to be funded has been funded. Everything that could be cut has been cut. There's no more room to move around in this. And the whole reason why we put the human services budget in a separate item is not because we don't trust you. It's because that way we don't have to trust you. Government works best not when we trust our governors, but when we don't have to trust our governors, because it's written into the law as a binding agreement what that number is going to be. Now, I have not made a secret of it. I've said explicitly, I am going to get up on the floor, assuming that I have the opportunity, and I'm going to request that the budget be amended to add 2% as human services funding. And I am comfortable to allow that discussion to take place on the floor and to have it voted down to possibly $0, if that's what this town wants, if that's what representative town meeting wants, if that's what open town meeting wants, so be it. But there's no other room in the budget for this to move around. We're going up from here. We all know that. We all understand the impact that this is going to have on the budget. We all have our own ideas about what the town can afford and what the town should afford. And we've already litigated this. We're done. Let's move on. Thank you.
Nell.
Nell Mayo. So it's a little frustrating to me because I throw my hands up in the air and I say, if anyone here is saying this is a crucial conversation to be able to understand how this is going to work, I'm just like, were you not listening on Thursday when we had the exact same conversation to death, right? I also think there's a fallacy in the logic to say that people are going to be coming into the meeting, because what we talked about Thursday was an article that would be binding, that would be for the human services before the general budget. And so to me, it is completely a fallacy to say people are going to come into that meeting and not already have their opinions on the budget. Like, are we suggesting that people are going to come in, only vote for human services and then leave and not vote on the budget? Because if that's the argument, it's going to be people in favor of high spending, and you can be sure that the people in favor of low spending are going to be getting up during the article on human services and saying, hey, this is how it's going to affect the budget. And they're going to be doing the back of the napkin math either way. And I also think that we can really count on the fact that people are going to try to make other amendments during the general budget article. It's going to make it more confusing when you have things going in both ways. I think because of the way you have formatted the human services to have it allotted for $1, I think it's going to be talked about in real dollars. It's not going to be talked about in percentages. I think you're all ignoring the actual numbered allocations because you put it in at $1. So the article, I have the article from last March. It talks about the allocations in real dollars. You're not going to have the allocations, but people from the Human Services Committee are going going to get up and try to speak to the allocations to justify it. They're going to try to speak to say, we actually need this full amount because if you cut it into a quarter, then there's no point in giving them that money because it doesn't fund their mandate. We saw all of this last year. I'm speed talking to get it into 2 minutes, but you're going to have them come up, you're going to have them fight, and if people don't trust you, it's because they made an advisory vote and then it was disregarded. And they put in up to 2% because they didn't want to have to spend the full 2% and they didn't. Is it 30,000? You know, it's slightly under, right? I'm not saying I'm in favor of 469, but I really think that this argument falls flat.
Kate? Pardon me? You're all set. Randy, then Dick.
Hi, Randy Blodgett, District 7. I just want to make a point while our attorneys are here. So can you go through the process? RTM is voted down. We have open town meeting. My understanding is then anything that's in RTM is not an OTM, and there would have to be some portion added back in to address everything we just talked about.
It would have to come back to the select board for a rewarning of articles. Do you want to continue?
Well, I meant there's no committees. Does the select board do that? Like, how does that happen?
I'm happy to speak to. So you have to warn a meeting no more than 40 and no less than 30 days ahead of time. So you would have to rewarn an open town meeting if we get there. And Randy is correct that the Human Services Committee as it exists now is a committee created by RTM, but there are ways that you could, appoint a Human Services Committee yourselves if we were to switch to an open town meeting, because you have the power to appoint committees in the charter.
Like any other committee.
And there could be other solutions. That's something we could discuss when we get there, but it's just the base legal.
Great.
Yeah.
Randy. Dick.
Someone asked if a budget had ever been amended upward and then the body didn't do what the board didn't do what the body did. I was part of the high school board when the body amended the budget upward and the board did not spend the money where the body wanted to. The following year, nobody even brought it up. It was certainly a little bit smaller amount, but it did happen.
But that was a school.
That was a school, yes, not the town that I can recall.
Thank you.
Peter brought up something about getting to a flat rate. I think if the moderator, let Bobby answer this, the moderator is not going to let the discussion go about getting something to a flat rate. Under other business, I think it could be discussed, but under the article of the budget, somebody can say, well, we would like to get it to a flat rate. I don't think the moderator is going to let that happen. One of the issue is that this number is up around $500,000. And if the body decides to put $500,000 into the budget and they go, well, we're up to 8.5%, it would take, and I would say that you're all committing to saying, okay, they did that. But the reality is to get it under control, it would take courage to go, you know what? We're only going to spend $200,000 on human services, and we're just going to let the other sit in the pot, and then it'll go to unassigned fund balance. That's where the courage comes in. If you're so concerned about this amount of money escalating higher and higher, then I think you as a board, if this goes up to $500,000 or higher, have to rethink what you just said here 15 minutes ago.
Interesting. Okay.
Could I speak to that for a second? Is that?
Sure.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's a chance we're taking, right? And it would be, I would have to live with that $500,000. But again, I'm just going to go back to what I want to consider a collaborative effort in hoping that the people who have entrusted me with this position would trust me to do as they wish. I would also hope that whoever is proposing numbers would recognize that this town maybe can't afford $500,000 and would come down to a level that we could afford. And if we have that discussion during the budget process, I believe that's where it fleshes out. And does it become advisory? Sure. This whole thing is pretty advisory right now. We know where we want to spend it, but we've seen it happen before where the board has had to make some decisions because a fire truck failed and we had to fix it, and so those are the decisions that we make as a board. But if whatever body of government tells me we have to spend X, that is, I'm going to honor those wishes. All right, but I hear what you're saying, and I'm hoping by my proposal, bringing that conversation into the budget piece of this makes it more collaborative, and we can settle on something that gets everybody where they need to be. That's my hope.
All right. Is there, Timothy, is there anyone else who hasn't spoken and wishes to? Otherwise, I'm going to give Robin a minute rebuttal, and so you get a minute too. Timothy.
I just wanted to say that this makes a lot of sense, what you guys are talking about here, what you brought up. If we're talking about the actual taxpayers here and we decide, okay, you're going to get this amount out of my pocket, and all of a sudden we're laying on an additional amount on top of that as a surprise, and I just want to correct one assertion earlier. Because we had roll call votes, we actually have on record that there were 14 people that abstained from passing the budget, and those same 14 people voted to put in that 2%. So I just wanted to correct that. Thank you.
All right then. Let's give Robin another minute for her second dip.
Hi, I just want to say, if your goal is to, I agree with Nell that I don't think that people have such a shallow understanding of what they're voting on that when they vote on this as a separate article, they don't understand how it's impacting the budget. We all understand that, okay? And if your goal is to have a more collaborative, productive, and less contentious discussion, this is the opposite of that. I guarantee you, if you put this as something that people have to debate within the budget article and all the other things that people want to be less or more within that, it's going to be very ugly and messy and confusing. I do not look forward to having this be a part of our town meeting. I think it would be much simpler, faster, and less divisive if you would let it remain as a binding separate article, because the whole reason for this article is that people didn't want to have to debate for 40 minutes about which agency should get how much against which. That's why they put it all as one thing. And so if you're going to put that, dump that without any of the allocations back into the budget, then we're going to argue about all of those individual organizations plus all of the other budget lines. This is not going to be good for our community, and I really caution you to please not do this.
Thank you. Gemma, 1 minute.
I just want, as my last comment, to sort of maybe try to clear up some of the confusion that seems to be reigning about last year's vote. I voted against the budget last year because I felt that too much money was being allocated to the police department. And I voted for the human services budget at 2% because I felt that that was appropriate. Actually, I moved that we raise it to 2.2%, and there were no takers on the floor for that. I was fine with that. But then when the overall budget came around again, I voted the budget down again, despite the fact that the 2% had been, voted on, because I still felt that the overall budget was too high. I don't feel that this year. I feel that the budget, as it has been constructed, is the appropriate budget for this year. We should pass it, have a separate discussion about human services, and what happens, happens. Thanks.
All right. Let's hear from Mr. Agave, and then we'll vote. Ready?
Yes. Am I audible here?
We can hear you.
Yes. Okay, good. Thank you. Well, a couple of things. One of the things I take exception to the presentation of the whole thing, that somehow the procedure that happened last year was wrong. It was a perfectly legitimate procedure. And so it just, I can't understand. I think I'm echoing what a lot of people are saying. The town body, the governing body of this town, the representative town meeting, the people of this town said, we want 2% of the budget dedicated to human services. That should be in the budget. If there are people in the town who don't want that, they should do what's done everywhere in a democracy, is run for a seat and vote differently. I feel like this whole mess going on right now has created the very divisiveness that you were trying to, that you said you were trying to avoid, and it's just feels like an end run around a perfectly good democratic procedure, that a way of finding a loophole to sabotage the will of the people. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
One more select board comment.
Wait, let's hear for one more.
From the
Janet.
side, okay.
I just have a quick reminder, Janet, Therese, I live in West Brattleboro. You're asking more than just voters, their opinion. You're asking people who, in the RTM, a significant portion actually work for those agencies. And that's really complicated. If you asked me if I was going to vote, I've worked for lots of human service agencies in my career, right? If you asked me about, like, you know, funding my own agency or funding the agency I'm, like, you know, deeply embedded with, I'm going to have a really strong opinion. Like, I'd want my salary to continue. I'd want my raise or whatever, or my services. Anyway, I just wanted a reminder that you're asking more than just citizens. There's a significant number of people on the RTM who are also employed or deeply involved with these agencies. That's complicated. Anyway.
Thank you. Amanda, you wanted to speak?
Yeah, sorry to rush that. It was just after Spoon's call-in. I disagree. I think that this discussion we're having here is very important. I'm grateful to Peter for bringing it up. We will, you know, Chair will have us do a vote soon. But I want to validate this discussion. And I don't like the fact that there are, in the conversation, there are accusations. That's not appropriate. It's not appropriate for our community to start pointing fingers at each other and accusing one another of nefarious acts. We are having a discussion in public. We are listening. We are, it's not a done deal, right? So I just urge everyone to continue try having an open mind. See what happens here. That's all.
Well, thank you, Amanda. Heidi, I'm sorry, the case is closed. All select board members.
I'd like to make a comment.
Go right ahead.
Yeah. So, if you vote for this proposal, you will be, based on what we heard from the town attorneys, you will be voting for more power for the next select board around this issue of human service budget spending, and less power for the people who show up at whatever town meeting we have this spring. I heard multiple people at this table say that if they're at this table after our town meeting, that they would take the advice of town meeting, whatever they land on in terms of human services spending. But this body just voted against taking that advice from last year. This body voted, last spring, it was 2% that they landed on. Before that, there was that, remember it was put on the ballot on March 4th, this question of how much should go, and a plurality, meaning the option that got the most votes was more than 2%. A majority of voters said they wanted between 1% and 2% or more. And this body voted against that. This body just voted last week to bring it down to 0. So if you've just said you will follow the will of the voters at town meeting, but you just didn't do that. You just voted otherwise. So I am passionate about this because it's a matter of democracy. And at this moment when there is so much reason for people to be skeptical of government, and there is so much fear, and there is so much of our democratic norms being eroded. And yes, we need open discussion. I appreciate the opportunity for us to be able to discuss this. But I do have concerns about spending $500,000 on these organizations when we said no to Star when she came to ask for a few more hours to be able to keep the library open when someone's out sick. And we've had difficult conversations. You know, we're really our department directors have been working so hard with what they have. So I really appreciate the concerns, and I appreciate I like the idea of moving towards looking at this all together. But for right now, at the 11th hour to get this, I'm not going to be able to support this.
Point of clarification.
No.
I've heard two conflicting numbers. I've heard up to 2%. I've heard 2%. I just want to make sure that we're talking about which number.
What we've had a motion for, and what I'm asking for final select board comments on it before we vote, is to remove Article, which one is it?
Remove Article 6 in version A.
Basically,
So
version C.
my understanding of the motion was.
So my motion was to accept version A, striking Article 6.
So, yeah.
Right.
And so there is no specific number that we're talking about here.
Right. We have not talked about a number.
Okay.
Was there there may have been a question about something that I said, and I'm happy to clarify.
I don't think so.
Pretty clear.
Okay, so anyone else, any other select board member want to discuss this item before we vote?
No.
Okay, all select board members in favor of Peter's motion to adopt the warnings for the March 3, 2026 town meeting and the March 21st, 2026 representative town meeting, version A as amended, please raise your hand and say aye. Okay.
Are you going to say aye?
Aye.
Aye.
And all those not in favor of this motion, please raise your hand and say no.
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 Okay, the nays have it. And I don't know where we go.
We need to
We
decide
need,
if
we
we're-
need a warning. We need to walk out of this room with a warning. So I would look for another motion from a board member.
I move to accept version A for the annual representative town meeting warning for the articles.
A.
We have A, B, and
So
Peter's
A,
motion was C.
not as amended, but as presented.
As presented.
All right. And do you want to speak to it, Amanda?
This version has the appropriation for human services funding happening after the budget
After.
After the budget vote.
Ooh.
So Article 5 is to see how much money the town will raise appropriate, blah, blah, blah. And Article 6 is to see if the town will raise appropriate sum of blank. My hypothesis there is that after hearing the discussion coming from the floor, saying, but of course, we're talking about human services funding in relation to our total budget. And with that consciousness in mind, that would be an appropriate place to have it versus in advance of the general fund budget vote. That's my take. I'd love to hear what other select board members think.
I am completely content with version A and will happily vote for it and have no further opinion.
I agree with Amanda because I see it as first we need to approve this budget or discuss this budget, which is includes these core town services that we provide.
All right. Peter, do you have anything to say?
Oh, I got a lot to say. Yeah. So once again, what we're doing is we're back to square one, where we could fail a budget and add money back in to a failed budget, or we could pass a budget and add money back in to and increase that budget. Is that my understanding of this amendment?
Yes.
Yep.
Well, motion. Yes.
Yes.
Motion. That is my understanding.
Yeah, in full faith that the body will be reasonable and have in their consciousness that we can't spend another $500,000.
What made them unreasonable before?
Is that necessary to relitigate at this point?
I mean, we do it all the time, so yeah. What made them unreasonable before?
I wasn't making an association that there was unreasonableness before, but more that in the context of the testimony that we've heard from the floor, that that is in our consciousness moving towards this town meeting.
We're choosing between A and B. They're exactly the same in a slightly different order. If someone feels strongly about B, I'm happy to vote for B, but also A. So,
You
All right.
prefer otherwise?
Oh, I'm not voting on this.
Okay.
All right.
I will say that I still think that your idea is good, Peter, but I also heard the testimony from the room and on Zoom, and I couldn't go with it, and yeah.
And
All right.
there wasn't really a time to say this. I didn't vote no because I thought it was bad. I thought it was a completely honorable, reasonable idea. I think they were both versions are reasonable, and I like this one slightly better, but it was not a, Peter, I can't believe you said this moment. So I don't know if
All
that
right.
matters.
I really don't think this conversation, we just need to vote. And go ahead, Kate.
The town attorney can either tell me I'm wrong or not. The way you're talking is you're going to do the human services vote after you vote the budget. When you do the budget, you're appropriating a certain amount of money. So if you say we're going to spend $27 million, and then you come and you say, well, we want to add another $500,000 or whatever for human services, doesn't that impact the bottom line? So shouldn't it be flipped and you do the human services first and then you appropriate the full amount? It doesn't matter?
It impacts the bottom line
either way.
No matter what, either you
But what I'm
voted
saying is there's the bottom line that we have voted on, so that don't they have to lower something to make it so they're raising
If you want the
$27
rate to stay the same, but
Because if you're voting separately on human services, whatever that number is, you're going to add to whatever
Kate,
budget.
let me
That's what
just
I'm
say
saying.
that was the entire point of Peter's motion.
Exactly.
I know,
Yeah.
I know, but I'm just trying to say that it just seems it would be better to know what you're adding to the.
Well,
So
the concept is, in this case, as opposed to Peter's motion earlier, is that the overall budget is known and voted on. And so the tax implications are known and voted on. And then, therefore, that may or may not inform RTM's vote on the human service budget. And so that's what we're voting on. And Are my colleagues ready to vote? No, you want to speak to it?
Yes, please. So responding directly to what Kate's saying, I believe last year we did it essentially this way, right? We had the big budget appropriation and then a separate human services appropriation. We did not.
Human service was first.
But we did not change the budget number based on the vote on the human services number. They were two separate appropriations. They both affected the tax rate, but if they had just been voted up straight with no amendments, no math would have needed to have been done, and the big budget item does not include, last year did not include the human services money, right? So
that's correct. The two are going to be added together, whatever you vote. The issue when somebody's voting on one or the other, depending on which one you put first and which one second, is, well, if I vote yes or no on this, how's that going to affect the next vote, and vice versa?
But it only affects the vote in terms of people's tolerances for what they want the budget to be. It's not like we put...
There's the budget, and then there's the
Correct.
allocation
Right.
for human services funding, and that comes up with your total tax bill.
Right.
But that's not actually changing the
Either
budget, the operating budget of the town.
Correct. Okay.
What
thank
you
you.
allocate in a separate article for human services is going to be binding, and that's allocated. Boom. That number gets
great.
added in
On
for
some-
your tax rate.
Sorry about I was kind of running over what happened last year, and I think we know, and big tip of the hat to the school board for delivering a low budget, which brought us to 2.8 of the overall tax impact. I think if we had a no such thing as a human services budget, we would have been at roughly about 1% of an increase overall. That was the impact. That was also one of the reasons I made my motion. But that motion has been killed.
It's not on the table.
And we need to vote on A or B.
The motion for A has been made by Amanda. Are we ready to vote?
Yes.
All right. All select board members in favor of Amanda's motion to adopt the warning for the March 3rd, 2026 town meeting and March 21st, 2026 representative town meeting, version A, as presented, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Okay, all voting nay, please raise your hand and say no. Okay, anyone abstaining, please raise your hand and say abstain.
Abstain.
Okay, so we have a 3-1-1 vote. Thank you all very much. We have one more matter to discuss. Should we take a break or should we discuss it now? Let's discuss it now. John?
Yeah. So we have the November November 2025 finance report, which was carried over from your last meeting. And these are the financial reports for the 5 months ended November 2025. And in your packet, you will see line item details for activity from the town's general fund and the town's two enterprise funds, utilities and parking. And with 42% of the fiscal year completed in the general fund, revenues, when annualized for that 5-month period, would calculate at 44% of the budget, so running slightly higher than the amount of the fiscal year. Expenditures, however, prorated, actually are running at 39% of the annual budget, so are slightly lower than how far we are in the fiscal year. We have a surplus in the general fund of $10,842,000, and cash balances as of November 30th within the general fund total $21,211,000. Finance team notes several areas worth taking notice of for the board. One is that EMS revenue, which is at $536,768 through the end of November, when annualized, could be expected to come in at $1.3 million, $1,288,000, which is exceeding our approved budget currently by over $400,000, which is good. We are seeing that likely benefits are running a little bit high in Social Security, Vermont, child care contribution, and retirement due to overtime and comp time expenses, but our health insurance is expected to be under budget by a similar amount. So that's kind of benefits are kind of a wash through November. While this report calls out workers' comp and general liability as being tracked, we now have received our bill on those, as I reported at your last meeting, and that is going to go over budget. We're going to have to figure that one out. Another item that the finance team notes is that utility costs are rising, and those will exceed the budget for FY26. Final note that I'll mention is overtime budgets, which you've focused on in other months. These are expected to overrun the budget for fire, police, and dispatch. Fire overtime is currently over budget by almost $120,000 for the year, but this is offset by underspending of staff salaries, and the underspending is nearly $300,000, so we're in pretty good shape with managing overtime, which is great. Police similarly they're currently overspent on overtime by about $7,600, but they're underspent on staff salaries by $238,687. So they're managing their overtime very well in that department as well.
Do you mind if I ask a quick question there?
Sure. Yep.
You said police is over by 7,000-ish?
Yeah, 7,600.
And they're at 78% of their budget throughout the year?
That was a mistake. That's why I wanted to correct that.
Got it. Yeah. Thank you.
At least when I went and looked at the numbers, that was what it was. So, utilities fund, so at 42% of the year completed. Revenues raised are running at 41% of the annual budget, so utilities is in good shape on the revenue side. Expenditures are at 26% when prorated, so doing very well on expenditures and utilities. We have a surplus running at $834,345. Parking fund also doing pretty well. Revenues are at 37% of the annual budget, but expenditures when prorated are at 33%. So we are currently running in the black in the parking fund at almost $16,000. A list of other reports are included, including loan report, grant report, transfer report, and as requested by, I think, one of the board members, the reserve fund balances for the fire truck and the ambulance. I'm happy to try to answer any questions that the board has, and if I don't know the answer, I will get it for you.
Thank you, John. I think it's a really positive report, especially in some of our key areas of EMS revenue, fire and police overtime, and my favorite, which is the parking fund being back in the black. Anyone else have any other comments?
No.
Thanks so much for this work. And your overview, and it's great to see all these areas where we're on target. And so appreciate that.
Anyone else? Anyone from the public? Randy, Kate?
Just had a quick question. I'm glad we're seemingly on target. With the open positions in fire EMS and in dispatch, looking out from, the December numbers will be coming shortly in a couple weeks. Where are we at for the rest of the year with that balancing act of salaries not being paid to overtime being paid to benefits being over because we're over on overtime and it costs more? Do we reach a balancing point of getting people hired and having less overtime by June, or where do you think, and I know it's a crystal ball you're reading, but where do you think we're going to end up?
John?
Yeah, great question, Randy. That's really hard to say. I mean, we're definitely struggling with recruitment in the fire department. We hope to improve that in the next fiscal year. But if we could get some folks on board, that will help out tremendously. Police, I'm really not worried at all. I mean, we're very flush on the salary savings, and I think that will only be improved if we can fill those dispatch positions. So,
has there been any look at combining dispatch with Windham County Sheriff, and if there's a cost savings and having a combined dispatch for the whole area?
Norma's not here. Oh, Norma. Norma.
I'm not aware of any serious look at that. I don't know if the department has been looking at that at all, but we are here really focused on providing Brattleboro a good service and not trying to expand our services to other towns. That is potentially something we could look at in the future, but I'm not aware of any serious efforts in that.
And
in that regard.
I think we had there was discussion of that, with the fire and ambulance, and I think we had the case that the New Hampshire company has ceased operations or planning on it.
I don't know.
Yeah,
I can't hear
anyway,
anything at the table.
Never mind. When I am better informed of my facts, I'll get in touch. Kate?
I just have a quick question about the EMS revenue. The EMS revenue that we heard about back in November was actually $60,000 more than the annualized number we're hearing now. So it's like the annualized number now is $60,000 less than what we heard in November. And I understand that because it's going to go like this.
Yep.
So my question is, we heard, and I have it somewhere, but that in November, the fire department was going to come and give us all an update on the FY25 EMS numbers. And I'm wondering where that stands, because unless I slept through it, we did not hear the actuals in November from the fire department. I'm just wondering if that could help us all understand what's really happening.
So the fire department will be coming next month for their quarterly report, and perhaps they could address that at that time. Okay.
All right. Anyone else? Is there a motion?
No.
All right. Then that should conclude our business for the evening. I would entertain a final motion.
I move to adjourn.
Oscar has moved to adjourn. All select board members in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Good night, everyone. Thank you, everyone. Thank you,
5-0.
Seth. Thank you, BCTV. Thank you for all sticking it in.